Sensei Amala Wrightson was born in Auckland, New Zealand in 1958 and worked in theatre before taking up full-time Zen training. She and her husband Richard began Zen practice in 1982 after attending a workshop led by Roshi Philip Kapler in Sweden. In 1986 they became students of Roshi Bodhin Shohede, Roshi Kapler's Dharma Hare, and then newly appointed abbot of the Rochester Zen Center. Amala Sensei began full-time residential training in Rochester in 1989, shortly after completing an MA in Italian at Auckland University, and she was ordained in 1999. From 1996 to 2003, she was the center's head of the Zendo and the head priest in charge of training, working closely with Roshi Shohede, offering Daisan, private one-to-one meditation instruction, to Zen Center members and leading shorter sesshin, intensive retreats. During her final year, she was also acting spiritual director of the center, while Roshi Shohede was on a sabbatical. In late 2003, upon completion of formal koan training under Roshi Kojede, Amala Sensei returned to resettle in New Zealand, and since then has dedicated her time to the creation of a place for authentic Zen practice and training in Auckland. She was given formal permission to teach by Roshi Bodhin Shohede in 2004 and was sanctioned as a full Dharma heir in a ceremony held in Auckland in 2012. She continues to spend some time each year at the Rochester Zen Center and is a member of the American Zen Teachers Association, ASADHA. At present, Sensei Amala Wrightson is the director of Auckland Zen Center, and she is also the member of the Supreme Dhamma Council of the International Buddhist Confederation, IBC.
The climate crisis, or the environmental crisis. On Earth there are myriad beings, human and animal, who are suffering from the effects of human activity. And this human-induced suffering has a cause, and that cause is our craving for a lasting world and lasting pleasures, as one teacher put it. We've been for centuries now really ruthlessly extracting raw materials from the earth, including exploiting human beings to fulfill our cravings, and always seeking products that are better, different, more of them, and preferably always the cheapest we can manage. We turn to those products to keep us stimulated, to keep us comfortable. Our whole world economy is based on the principle of endless growth, but we know that that's not possible. That things can't expand forever. There has to be a turning of the wheel. What goes up must come down. What expands must contract. We know this. And as I mentioned, it's not just human beings exploiting the planet, it's the wealthy and the powerful exploiting the poor and the less well-resourced. And we can see behind these structures the three poisons that was mentioned in the quotation: greed, hatred, and delusion. Greed primarily, but then of course out of that comes ill will in terms of protecting what we own and what we consider to be ours. And both greed and hatred maintained by delusion. The media so exemplifies this, the amplification of conspiracy theories, denial, climate change denial, pandemic denial, this real magnification of misinformation and lies that we have to contend with. When we look at these things, the outlook seems grim, and I think it's fair to say that it is grim. We can compare it with the huge upheaval of the pandemic that we're in right now. In order to soften the consequences of the pandemic, many governments have borrowed vast sums to prop up their economies hit by COVID. But we can't borrow to fix the climate crisis because we're already in debt to the planet. We're already in the red. In my region, the Pacific, land is already disappearing underwater. People on Pacific islands are seeing kumara patches, sweet potato patches, which have been passed down from generation to generation, literally disappearing underwater. But there is hope, and this comes in the third part of the Four Noble Truths. The third noble truth is that there is a way out. If we think of the climate crisis being caused by the overheated human mind, this is what has raised global temperatures. We know that the human mind can cool down. There is a way out. And that way is set out in the Eightfold Path. And we can just touch on these 8 aspects. The first strand of the Eightfold Path is right view. This calls us to face the truth of human created global suffering, and instead of living in denial, to acknowledge the moment that we are in, the urgency of the need to respond. The second aspect of the Eightfold Path is right aspiration. Of course, it's not enough just to see our collective suffering, both of human beings and other sentient beings, but to commit, all of us, to doing what we can to cool the planet and our minds, to really reflect deeply on how to care for the earth and how to care for each other. If we can really do this with commitment and sincerity, then we'll see a path forward. The third aspect of the Eightfold Path is right speech. Again, we can see the suffering, we can even commit to do something about it, but to communicate the urgency of the situation to others is also essential. We need to advocate for change with governments, with business, and with all who exercise power. The reason why this is so important is that individual actions, however beneficial they may be, are not enough, because our whole system is geared towards emitting carbon, and it's a huge task to change the system. It's a little bit like trying to change the course of an oil tanker. There's this huge momentum behind it, and it's not easy to change course. So pointing out to people in power how damaging our current direction is, and addressing the greed and the ill will and the delusion that are embedded in our institutions. Next comes right action. And we've already covered part of this. We make as much transformational change in our own lives as we can, in the lives of our immediate communities. We try to live as simply and frugally as we can. And we share where we can. This is one of the very crucial elements of our response to the climate emergency, is that we recognize communities which are already suffering and unstintingly share with them what is the help that they need. The next aspect of the Eightfold Path is right livelihood. We must uphold the first precept, not to kill but to cherish all life, in our choice of occupation. We can at this also work to eliminate destructive practices in our work, changing the way we do things in order to cause less harm and to respond to the signs of distress that the earth is already showing us. Sixth is right effort. To make all of our decisions in our personal lives, in our work lives, in the light of healing our world, healing the planet, and not further harming it, and nurturing positive attitudes towards our earth, and as much as possible avoiding or eliminating unwholesome attitudes and unwholesome habits in particular. The next comes right mindfulness, to stay as aware as we can of our actions, our choices, and their effects. There has been so much ignorance in the way in which we've been relating to the world. We imagine that we can throw stuff away, but there is no away. What goes around comes around, and we're experiencing that now. To be aware of our habits and our thoughts, to be aware of how we create the delusions of self and other. And then finally, right concentration, to go beyond duality as much as we can and as often as we can, to touch that place of no self, to forget the self and to be awakened by the 10,000 things. That is the promise of entering into the Eightfold Path, practicing the Eightfold Path. And all of this, to work together, to love each other, to create strong communities that can support each other through tough times, through the inevitable ups and downs, more extreme as we go forward because of the global warming. And it is possible, I think we have to face this too, that we human beings will not pass this spiritual test, and we may not succeed in curbing rising temperatures, and we may not be able to collectively change the direction of the oil tanker, so to speak. But if we have sincerely practiced the Eightfold Path, it will stand us in good stead. Because, of course, whatever happens, the Dharma will be needed. And in fact, more than ever, if we do face increased and ongoing increases in extreme weather events and droughts and so forth, really none of our efforts to realize the Eightfold Path can be in vain. So just to end, to sum up, there are really three strands to our response that are essential. To reflect deeply on dukkha, anicca, and anatta, suffering, impermanence, and no self. No self here we can understand as just the fact that there are no borders when it comes to climate change. Emissions know no barriers. So we are all in this together. It is not a problem that we can solve unless we come together on it. The second point is making transformational change in our lives to reduce harm. We have to take our responsibility, personal responsibility for our lives, and do what we can. And then finally, to be advocates for structural change, because without that, there are many ways in which our individual efforts are ineffectual, because we're faced with a shortage, a lack of choices in terms of how to live less harmfully. So if we can make the changes in our personal lives that can mean that we can go and speak truth to power, so to speak, with conviction and with justification. And we'll stop here and end the talk.
On its face, powerful face our collective karma at this time. We had to transform or perish. She spoke powerfully about how the paradigm of endless growth is destroying us and how we have to completely reevaluate how we are living on this planet. She said the liberative lens of the Four Noble Truths could help us in this. She spoke also of the need for advocacy, that we need to speak out, we need to engage in action to change what is happening in this world. Three things she emphasized very much at the end that she wanted to get across to us. She said that we have to reflect deeply on suffering. We have to be very aware of how our habits and our thoughts lead us to suffering. And we need to go beyond the duality that keeps us mired in delusion. We have to forget the petty self and be awakened by the 10,000 things. Then we need to take full responsibility. Thirdly, the way to do this is to be advocates for a saner and wiser world. And so with these three strands, powerfully stated, she finished a very powerful and apt and appropriate Dharma talk. Venerable Bhante Buddharakkhita was born in Uganda, Africa. He was ordained as a Theravada Buddhist monk by the late Sayadaw U Silananda in 2002 at the Tathagat Meditation Center in San Jose, California. Founder and abbot of the Uganda Buddhist Center in Uganda, Bhante is a visiting professor at Union Theological Seminary in New York City. He is a vice president of the International Buddhist Confederation, India, and a long-time member of Global Buddhist Relief's Advisory Council in New Jersey, USA. Venerable Bhante Buddharakkhita is also a joint vice president of the IBC.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Your Holiness, your most venerable, venerables, Venerable Mahasangha, Your Excellencies, ladies, gentlemen, and to all Dharma brothers and sisters and friends, I'd like to give a message on this important day of ASADHA Pooya, or Dharma Chakra Day, which is on 24th of July, which commemorates the day when the Buddha gave a discourse which is called Dharma Chakra Parvattana Sutra, the great discourse on the timing of the Dharma wheel. This is the very first discourse the Buddha gave to his first 5 disciples at Sarnath, Deer Park in Varanasi. The discourse is very, very important to us, all of us. When he gave this discourse, the first 5 disciples attains the first level of sainthood, stream entry. That's how important it is. Of course, when the Buddha taught this discourse, it was a critical response to the conflict that was existing in the society back then. There were 2 worldviews, conflicting worldviews. One is self-mortification on one hand, on the other hand, self-indulgence. And the Buddha found out many people are suffering because of those 2 opposing views. So he taught the teaching, the Dharma, the Noble Eightfold Path, the middle path that stayed clear from those views. And this is what he called the Noble Eightfold Path: right understanding, right view, or right understanding, right view, the first one. Second, right thought. The third, right speech. The fourth, right action. The fifth, right livelihood. The sixth, right effort. The seventh, right mindfulness. And the number 8 is right concentration. Though it's numbered like this, for the sake of memory and understanding, this path is not linear. In many ways, it actually functions together in unison. It's not that you practice on Monday right understanding, and Tuesday right thought, and Wednesday right speech. No. So it has to be practiced together as a package. I'd like to talk about the relevance of this Noble Eightfold Path, the middle path, in the present day COVID-19 pandemic. When you look closely to this teaching, it's still relevant in our daily life, actually. That's why at the Uganda Buddhist Center, we have the Dharma Chakra, the wheel, the Dharma wheel in front of the temple, so that those people who come here and then they want to learn Buddhism, we just teach them before even they enter the temple. So the path is still relevant today. The Noble Eightfold Path is still relevant today, even in this pandemic. For instance, right understanding or right view. We need to have the right view of the cause of COVID and its cure. Of course, when the Buddha spelled it out, he said that right view, the cause of suffering, the cessation of the cause of suffering, of course, which is greed, hatred, and delusion. And then the Noble Eightfold Path that leads to the fourth is spelled out as the path that leads to the cessation of suffering. So those are the what we call the Four Noble Truths. So they are still relevant during COVID time. COVID time, you need to know the cause of COVID, and of course, COVID is suffering. You need to know the cause of COVID, and the end, the cure to COVID, and the way how we can cure it. So still, the template is relevant today. Then right thoughts. Right thought, these are thoughts of generosity. We need to give people who need help, our help around the world. We need to share what we have. Then loving kindness. We need to practice loving kindness, compassion. People are suffering around the world, so we need to help them from their suffering. Then right speech. Right speech. The Buddha spelled it out as speak what's truthful, kindness, and harmonious and meaningful. Again, it's relevant today when there's this COVID pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic. We need to speak the truth of the cause of COVID and its cure. So what I see now is a lot of misinformation and disinformation about COVID. The whole mystery about it, the cause, the vaccine, and all it's just amazing what's going on. But we need to seek the Buddha's teaching. Now, we go to right action. Of course, the Buddha spelled it out as abstaining from killing, abstaining from taking.
Venerable Buddharakkhita from Uganda gave an interesting talk, but unfortunately it was curtailed. For some reason, only about 6 minutes of the talk were recorded. But what Bhanteji said in that time was very, very useful. He spoke of the Eightfold Path, of course, and spoke about how it enjoined us to follow the path between extremes. Extremes are something that we find very easy to fall into, and the Eightfold Path helps us to steer clear of that kind of ignorance, which only leads to suffering. Bhanteji also mentioned how these 8 are not to be practiced in a linear fashion, but they have to be practiced together. If we practice them together and properly, then we can act in this suffering world with Maitri, Karuna, and we can be fully generous, which is in tune with our true nature. At this point, the video stopped. Professor Dr. Robert A.F. Thurman is the talented popularizer of the Buddhist teachings and the first Westerner Tibetan Buddhist monk ordained by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He's a very charismatic speaker and author of many books on Tibet, Buddhism, art, politics, culture, and on His Holiness the Dalai Lama himself. He was named by the New York Times as the leading American expert on Tibetan Buddhism and was awarded the prestigious Padma Shri award in 2020 for his help in recovering India's ancient Buddhist heritage. Time magazine chose him as one of the 25 most influential Americans in 1997, describing him as a larger-than-life scholar activist destined to convey the Dharma, the precious teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha, from Asia to America. Bob served as the J. Tsongkhapa Professor of Indo-Tibetan Buddhist Studies in the Department of Religion at Columbia University for 30 years, until 2020. Bob is the founder and active president of Tibet House in the US, a non-profit organization dedicated to the preservation and promotion of Tibetan culture, and of the American Institute of Buddhist Studies, a non-profit affiliated with the Center for Buddhist Studies at Columbia University and dedicated to the publication of translations of important artistic and scientific Tibetan treatises.
Okay, so greetings. I'm so happy to be part of this wonderful event, and especially because today is the day of the first turn celebrating in Tibet and in India, the Tibetans who are sons now of India, the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, Chukor Korwe Duchen, the great fourth day of the sixth lunar month, is how they understand it in their calendar. It moves around a little bit in the Western Roman calendar. And so I'm so happy to talk to you about that. And I want to talk about the Four Noble Truths. And I want to talk about why they're called noble, which is Arya Satyani, Chatvari Arya Satyani, that is. And the point is that the Arya there doesn't mean noble in the class sense. It does mean something a little bit better than ignoble. So it does mean that, but not in the just social class. It means noble in a cognitive class. And the cognitive class has to do with altruism. You know, my beloved Guru, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, he's constantly has been impressed on my mind. And and he's constantly mentioning to everyone about the need for altruism, compassion, nonviolence, etc., as we should all be aware of course. It's that without it, we're finished as the human species, which is destroying this planet at the moment as a whole, with too much coal dust and carbon and oil and gas and things, and too many cars, trucks. And if we don't develop altruism about each other, about animals, about nature, about future generations, we're finished. So he's only being practical, as Buddha ever was, as the Buddha himself was always very practical. So Arya means, for Buddha, he revalued the word to mean someone who's had a visceral experience that you are the same as me, viscerally. They've actually sort of floated out of their self-centeredness in some contemplative experience, or sometimes some other kind of transcendental experience, and they have felt that they were the same, the being in front of them was the same as them. And actually, once you feel that, you feel that spreads to everyone, in a way. So that's a noble person in the sense that they feel responsible for the other. Like a mother is a kind of noble for her child, because she knows it is herself. I mean, the body came from herself. And she gradually comes to realize it's a separate person, and it comes to realize it's a separate person. But at first, the two think they're each other, and they snuggle up there, And that's really necessary to the creating the comfort so the being can grow. Part of the human vulnerability, it grows out of, and sociality and dependence on others and loving, inner, deep loving and appreciation of others has to do with that we are born that way. And we are mammals, and the females know that beings have a oneness about them. They have also their relative separateness, but they do have their oneness. They're ahead of us in altruism, the females. Ahead of us, I mean males. They're ahead of us that way. So that's what Arya means. It means noble, in the sense of noblesse oblige, and a bit more selfless, bit more altruistic. Okay? And its opposite is pratyekjana, a sosokyewo in Tibetan, and that means a separated being. So it means alienated, someone who thinks I'm the only real one, and the rest of it is all some sort of illusion, and I just am out for myself, and that's the way of dealing with it. And then, so the first noble truth, first Arya Satya, first noble truth was that as long as you are that kind of separated or alienated person, you will be frustrated, you will be under stress, you will suffer. Because even things you think of as pleasurable, some temporary relief from your anxiety of you facing a vast universe, so much bigger than you, so many more people than you, so much more infinite than you, you're going to lose in that confrontation. Time is also there. Sickness will overtake you. Old age will overtake you. Death will overtake you. And you think of death as somehow loss of the life that you have. And so you're gonna meet people you don't like. You're gonna lose the people you do like, and in general you will suffer. That's all. And not that you have to. Buddha never intended that you have to. He's been badly misunderstood, East as well as West, in the past as meaning, because of only thinking of it as a noble truth, like it's like an indelible fact. But it's not. It's the fact for someone who's unenlightened. It's like Socrates, the unexamined life is not worth living. Buddha doesn't say being ignorant is not worth living. It's worth living anyway, because as human, you're going to be less ignorant than other kinds of animals. And you have a chance of waking from ignorance to become wise. But he never said that more depressing idea of Socrates, because he lived in Bharata, which was a more cozy place, a more happy country, more wealthy, more friendly on a relative level. That's why everybody wanted to go there in those days. Alexander the Great, the Iranians, they all wanted, the original Aryas perhaps wanted to go there because it was Garden of Eden. Indus is Eden, in those days, maybe. So the thing is, the first friendly fact, and I like to call them nowadays friendly fact, to kind of decondition this idea of noble, like it was some sort of high-class Snoopy business or caste business, and really put it in the plane of friendly, in the sense of noble, in the sense of a person who cares about you, who takes responsibility for you, as a good noble person does, on the good side of some temporarily decent sides of hierarchical societies, where the upper one feels responsible for the lower one, takes care of them. So like the nobleness of a mother, that's a good kind of nobility. Okay, so that's the first friendly fact or noble truth, is the unenlightened life will be frustrating and you will suffer, which is intending to make you want to discover why that is, how to escape from that, to renounce the sort of problems and cure yourself. It's like a doctor's recognizing a symptom. All right. So then, second noble truth or friendly fact is the cause of the first one, where it originates from. And in the first turning of the wheel of Dharma to the five ascetics, who had been Buddha's human companions when he was mortifying himself for 6 years, he said to them, it is craving, it is greed, it is lust, it is desire. And he said that in particular to shock them, because of course they thought they were doing anti-craving, but of course they were craving some kind of release and thing. So in fact, they were craving, even though it was by harming themselves, by starving themselves, by burning themselves in the sun, by freezing themselves in the winter and so on, doing mortification of the flesh, as Buddha had been doing. And so he He wanted to shock them. You're still greedily looking for something, like any kind of libertine in the world, but it's just the opposite extreme. So he put that, but then later he elaborates. It's basically the misknowing, thinking that I'm the really real thing, and the rest of it is unreal. And that's so I'm the all important. I should only be involved with myself and so forth. I'm the separated being. I'm the Parvattana, the separated being from reality, you know. And so that's really unrealistic, and that's the source of the suffering. Because so he said, no, you feel like that, and now you have to investigate. So he said that's the source of your suffering. So then his good news, the real Buddha's whole teaching was nirvana. You can cease that situation. You can terminate that. You can be free yourself from that. You can be blown away from that terrible situation of you versus the universe where you're losing all the time. You're human. You blew a lot away of interconnecting with things, being more relational, understanding things, developing empathy, learning to speak, share other people's understandings and intelligence and experience and data by talking, by developing language, getting away from the animalistic thing of just consuming everybody that you meet immediately or being consumed by them. So therefore, you're in this wonderful position of having, which you've reached by your own evolutionary effort. You've reached that by a causal process. If you understand what you are and the causal process, you can achieve the reality of the situation, which is freedom from suffering, pure happiness, bliss, joy, liberation, moksha. You can achieve it. And that's his third friendly fact and noble truth. That's what it is. That freedom is available. And how do I know? I achieve it now. I am free. He said, I'm not saying that. I'm like, whatever I am. But he felt that. And permanently. And he knew that in a way, he had always felt it, actually. He remembered infinite previous. Why was he able to remember his infinite previous lives? Because he realized that nirvana had always been his reality. And he was suffering as a crocodile or a monkey king or an ordinary monkey or a lion or a fox or a rabbit or whatever he was. He actually already was made of nirvana, if you will, made of clear light of bliss, as he would put it in his more esoteric things earlier on, you know. And so he that's his good news. That was his good news. It's like Satchit Ananda, or Sat, beyond Sat and Asat, maybe Chit Ananda. It's like that. So that's his good news, and that's his third noble truth. And the fourth noble truth is then where I really get to like him, because he says, I'm so happy. And that happy is a realistic happiness. And it's the way the world is. And we all actually partake of it. We're made of it even. It's the thing. But we're so used to only suffering, to banging into everything and it banging into us, that at first we may only be able to think of it as if it was a place apart, like a nirvana that's somewhere else. So like leaving this world. We'll think of it like that. Probably that's the only way we can in the beginning to think about it. It's very hard to find it here in this, amidst these illusions and delusions that I just revealed to you in the second friendly fact or noble truth. So you can think about it that way, no problem, at first. And then he immediately goes on to say, the problem is that I can't just tell you something that you can cling on to, move your clinging over to my new formula or my new truth as a proposition, and just say, I got that, now I'm saved, now I'm in bliss. You can't, because you have to change yourself. You have to open up your heart, open up your mind in a different way and to do it. And you can't do that just by clinging onto a proposition. So a nirvana, therefore, is a negational expression. It means the extinction of a negative causal process and its replacement and seeing the positive process. But he doesn't necessarily add that right away, just freedom from the negative one. So then the most important thing for the regular people is the fourth noble truth and the fourth friendly fact. And that friendly reality or fact or truth is the Eightfold Path, which are the instructions. Since I can't just say something, then you cling on to it and then you'll be fine. I can give you, however, a set of instructions of how you can proceed, and you can focus and motivate your life down the upper ladder, you could say, up a stairway, or get on an escalator, or whatever you want to call it. And then you can understand yourself. You can be just like me. I'm not higher than you. I'm not better than you. I just did this. I'm more educated in this way. So actually, I'm an educator. Educere, in the Latin word is good. Bring out, lead out from within you, like the Vinaya in the Sanskrit. Lead out from within your own deepest heart, your own native wisdom, your own Buddha nature, they call it later, your inner soul awareness, you could say, bring that forth. And you can use the word soul for subtle mind once you realize it's not a fixed, rigid, absolute thing. It's a relational process at the subtle level that goes from life to life. Why can't you use that word? Of course you can. You just mean it's not a fixed identity that never changes. Buddha identity is an infinite identity. It embraces all identities. It's not one fixed, separated thing. No, that's the Parvattana, that's the alienated individual who thinks they have a separated identity, and that's what makes it problematic for them to relate to the world, and that's why they suffer. Okay? So then you have the Eightfold Path. Then in the Eightfold Path, I want to attribute my friend Alan Wallace, a scholar and friend and teacher, for coming up with, I read it in some book of his, he tried it, then he gave it up himself to tough luck. I'll push him back to, instead of taking right view, right motivation, right speech, right ethics, right livelihood, right creativity, right, instead of all those rights, which are right, you can say right for samyak. It's opposite mithya, you can say wrong. Sure, but it's a little wrong because it's a little not as good as it could be. I'd say not wrong, but it's a little bit not as effective as it could be in English, because it seems to mean that these things, you follow rules and then you'll be fine. But you can't create the right view by following a rule. To create the right view, you have to develop critical wisdom, prajna, dhamma pravichaya. You have to analyze things, and you have to see through their false sense of intrinsic substance and identity. And you have to realize they're only relational. By failing to find that solid, absolute core to everything that we habitually project into them, because we habitually think we have a solid core, and we're the one, and we're it, and we think we're going to find that and escape from all this, and that's a real danger. And so I like realistic. So you get a realistic view, and in your realistic view, you get, which really means you become really open-minded. You get the view of freedom. You get the view of causation. Causation means that things are relational. The cause relates to the effect. The cause destroys itself in producing the effect. Before the cause has destroyed itself, there is no effect. So in a way, you can take apart the way of describing it, but in fact, causal processes are fully relational. So the realistic view is that everything is caused, and even causes can be uncaused. And when you see the world as a sea of relationalities, and you deconstruct and you analyze and get rid of seeming absolutes within those causalities, as if an absolute could relate without becoming relative, which of course it can't, because it means what is not relative is what absolute means, right? And so it's our mind wants to project some referent beyond, because when we see black or white or blue, we think that blue touches the absolute blue. So when there's no blue, or even we will, like modern materialists, for example, they think nothing is a real place where they go when they die. They think nothing is a place, but actually then they don't, nothing is nothing. Therefore, it's not a place. You can't go there. So nobody ever gets to be nothing, actually. But never mind. But the point is, the realistic view is an opening of the mind. And that opening of the mind discovers a freedom. And then that freedom becomes an open space for choices within relationalities, among illusory relationalities, none of which is absolute, but still they are there as illusions, and then they can be ameliorated or they can be made worse. So, okay, so then realistic worldview is being open to the reality of the world. To be realistic is what it is. And unrealistic is some closed thing that the world is what I think it is. It's a dogma that I have about it. That's what the world is. It's me and my dogma. No, that's, all theory, but as a scientist, he was way ahead. Because he said all theories are only relational hypotheses fitting some experiences that we have. They're useful. He didn't say just throw them all away. They're useful. But don't make any of them an absolute dogma. Then you're trapped by it. Then it's not fitting it will not fit. It's not fitting the circumstances. It becomes unrealistic, which is like Karl Popper's theory of science. Laws of nature are what we think they might be. They're hypothetically projected to account for what we've experienced up to now in our experiments and what evidence we have. And when we get new evidence, we will falsify them and we'll get better theories. Because they should be changeable, because the theory will not capture the experience. It will not capture reality. And when scientists become dogmatic, they lose their openness to the phenomena they're investigating, and they become dogmatists and not scientists. Okay, so that's that worldview. Then the motivation, once you have an openness to what is real, you're motivated to really discover, and you're encouraged by Buddha to discover what he says he discovered, but see if you agree, whether you can find it, and by doing that, you investigate everything to see if the absolutes that we project into them and that we feel we have in ourselves, if they're really there. And then in the non-finding of them, we become liberated, actually. It's interesting. Anyway, then realistic speech, that's how even with speech, there's imperfections, even with Buddha saying, whatever I say, it's just there for you to critically try to think about, chew over, and then make some kind of understanding out of it yourself. You won't, just by believing it or accepting it as a dogma, it won't help. Because the ultimate reality is inexpressible, it's beyond word and theory. Then once we do that, we're motivated to really find out and really experience ourselves, because he encourages that we can. Then we have realistic speech, and that's a method. That's teaching. Mathematics is realistic speech. Because it measures things, and words and concepts are realistic speech, and speech that seeks freedom, that seeks to understand itself, not speech that dogmatically tries to separate us from reality. That's the bad speech. Good speech unifies us with it. And then realistic ethics, so that we don't act harmfully, but we act properly in an evolutionary sense, because we understand that we are these evolutionary beings and we make choices that cause our fate. Buddha took the word karma away from the Vedic ritual, where it meant, like samskara and karma, a ritual function, and he made it an ethical function, an interactive function of the relative being in the relative world that determines the fate, not the reaction of the gods to an action in a ritual, which is how it had meant before Buddha's time. And he made karma into a Darwinian theory of the individual evolution as well as the species, not merely mechanical in species. The individual, including the mental process, adhyatma, the adhyatma vidya, the inner science, of evolution. And then realistic ethics, then realistic livelihood to relate to and get along to your society, realistic creativity to create the new you, change your life, embrace bigger life, transcend fear of death, discover what death actually really is, as the marvelous quantum leap place of transition between lives, where you can leap to a far better circumstance in relationality or fall to a far worse one if you don't know how to manage it. It isn't just no God is either punishing you. All of them are trying to help you, the decent ones, of course. They're all trying to help you. But they can't do it completely for you. You have to, it will really depends on how open or closed you are. Then realistic mindfulness of learning about how your mind works and becoming more free within your mind. And finally, realistic samadhi, where you bring them all into a package and you transform yourself and the world around you. And you become a truly happy, truly loving, blissful being. And my latest book, in a popular sense, is based on my years of study and my still persisting unenlightenment, however, but my sense of closeness to it, let's say, just from having studied it so long as a Buddhologist. And it's called Wisdom is Bliss. 4 friendly, fun facts that can change your life. And that's in order to get people to be not so scared of it, calling like that. Okay, so thank you very much. I'm sure that I've met the time here, and I'm very honored to speak with you all. And it's all, whatever good things I said are the kind work of my gurus, the Venerable Geshe Wangyal and His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Kyabche Lingden Rinpoche, and so on. My greatest, my really best, and my wife, actually, who taught me a lot of things that I didn't know. And and any stupid thing I said, that's me. That's me persisting being silly. So please just forget about anything I said that was silly and you don't like. And if I said anything good, transmit it from my gurus, my beloved teachers, then do it. And then, practicing the Dharma yourself is being happy. And that's the duty, actually. The bhikshu, the mendicant, it's not a flagellating self. Renunciation is to reorder your priorities where you feel better and you feel more free. And you don't worry about your taxes and your military service and your childbearing and your tuition payment for your children and everything. And everybody's kind of a child and you want to see to their spiritual growth and upbringing. Okay? And so they're happy. And so your duty, as much as possible, is to be happy. And when you're happy, you'll be a good politician, you'll be a good businessman, you'll be a good householder, you'll be good whatever you are. You'll do it well because you'll be happy doing it. And you'll be kind and you won't hurt others. You'll feel satisfied in life yourself. So that's what Buddha wants. Third noble truth, third friendly fact is Buddha's main thing. Happiness is the human right, the human possibility, and the human destiny. And humans can bring all other beings through with them as they do that. Not much less easily take care of a beautiful planet like we live on if they just shape up and cheer up, okay? So final summary of Buddha's teaching, cheer up. That's it. Be of good cheer. That's what Shantideva says. Okay, all the best. Thank you.
Professor Thurman, as usual, gave an extremely entertaining and interesting talk. He spoke about how we have become separated, alienated people, and that we need to see the Four Noble Truths in another light, and we need to possibly change the language somewhat. He calls them the 4 friendly facts. These 4 friendly facts help us to bring forth our inner nature, our potential, so that we can stop being a separated being who is forever at war with oneself and the world, and become beings who are totally immersed in the truth of relationality, interdependence. This was a very powerful motive throughout Professor Thurman's talk. He said, we need rules, but even more than rules, we need critical wisdom. Critical wisdom that helps us see through to the heart of relationality, interdependence, and to stop being suffering, separated beings. He spoke of the real meaning of education, edukari, to lead out, to draw out that potential within us, that wisdom and compassion that lies at the heart of our being. So he said it's only this wisdom of relationality that can help us deconstruct absolutes and the rigidity that perpetuates suffering. In terms of the Noble Eightfold Path, he took issue with the word right, saying that right was a good translation for samyak, but slightly wrong. He would prefer it to be realistic, open to the reality of the world. And he went through the Eightfold Path using that word, realistic. He said theory cannot capture experience. Theory cannot capture reality. Speech has to go beyond dogma. Karma has to be seen as an ethical system, not just ritualistic duties to be performed in order to please the gods. He spoke of wisdom as being bliss, and that the 4 friendly facts can help us to discover this. Finally, he very powerfully put forward the view, the experience, I feel, that we need to be happy. We have a duty to be happy. We have to reorder our priorities so that we can feel freer and happier, and that's the way to help others. So happiness, he said, is our right, happiness is a possibility, and happiness is our destiny. So in typical Bob Thurman fashion, he asked us to shape up and cheer up. Professor Asanga Tilakaratne, a PhD scholar of University of Hawaii, is a professor of Pali and Buddhist Studies and founder head of the Department of Buddhist Studies at the University of Colombo in Sri Lanka. He has published both in Sinhala and English more than 100 papers on Buddhist studies. He co-edited with Professor Oliver A. Penatta 2,600 Years of Sambuddhatva, Global Journey of Awakening in 2012, a work covering the history, the current status of global Buddhism of all 3 traditions. In 2002, Professor Tilakaratne founded the Sri Lankan Association of Buddhist Studies, SLABS, an academic and professional organization of Buddhist scholars in Sri Lanka, and continues to serve as its joint secretary. In 2003, he founded with a group of academics and professionals the Dhamrivi Foundation, a government-registered not-for-profit voluntary organization for economic, social, educational, and spiritual development, and continues to function as its founder chairman.
Venerable members of the Mahasangha, dignitaries, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I feel that I am being honored by this invitation to deliver a short lecture on this auspicious day, the ASADHA full moon day, the full moon day of month of July, commemorating the turning of the wheel of the Dhamma by the Buddha. To begin with, I must thank International Buddhist Confederation, IBC, and its General Secretary, Venerable Dr. Dhammapiya, and also Indian Council for Cultural Relations, ICCR, and its director for extending this invitation to me. As you know, the Ashadha full moon day signifies the beginning of the turning of the wheel of the Dharma by the Buddha. 2 months after his enlightenment, which took place on Vaishakha full moon day, which we call Buddha Purnima, and 2 months after the enlightenment, on Ashadha full moon day, to be exact, from today 2610 years ago, the Buddha delivered his first sermon, which is called Dharma Chakra Sutta, at Benares, the sacred city, Isipatana Migadaya. As citizens of Republic of India, all of you are very familiar with Dharma Chakra Mudra, which is which comes from Ashokan Empire, and also the state mudra, emblem of Republic of India. Now, Dharma Chakra mudra adopted by Emperor Ashoka signifies basically the concept of Dharma Chakra Parvattana. So the origin of Dharma Chakra mudra is the first sermon of the Buddha delivered on this particular day. Now, this discourse is recorded in the Buddhist canon Samyutta Nikaya. In this sermon, Buddha uses a particular term which I would like you to pay your attention. In delivering this sermon, Buddha uses in Pali language Dhamma Chakkang Pavattitang Appativattiyang. Dhamma Chakkang Pavattitang. The wheel of Dharma has been turned on. Appativattiyang. Now we can get the Sanskrit form Aprativartya. Aprativartya or Appativattiyang in Pali language means a wheel that cannot be turned back. Now it is important to think, where does this idea of the Dharma Chakra or wheel of Dharma that cannot be turned back, what is the meaning of this? In fact, when we think of this, we tend to think of the Chakravarti or universal monarch. The concept of Chakravarti or universal monarch is pretty much in the Indian tradition and also in the Buddhist tradition. So the universal monarch is called Chakravartin. Now, the significance of this chakra, wheel, of this ruler of rulers, is basically represented by, in my understanding, the armored vehicle of the universal monarch. The idea is that when this chakra or the armored vehicle travels through various kingdoms, no ruler can resist it. No ruler can turn it back. Now, in the case of Chakravartin, universal monarch, it is called the wheel of command or wheel of law, Ajna Chakra. So it is the Ajna Chakra of the Chakravartin that crawls on, and it cannot be resisted, it cannot be stopped, it cannot be turned back by anyone else. Now it is very important that the Buddha uses this metaphor when it comes to the Dharma Chakra. Now Dharma Chakra means the wheel of the Dharma. Now wheel of the Dharma cannot be turned back, cannot be stopped by anybody. But basically, Appativattiyang, Aprativartya means it cannot be turned back, it cannot be reversed. This doesn't necessarily mean the symbol of power, but in the Dharma Chakra Parvattana, this means something more. When the Buddha said that the turning of the wheel cannot be turned back by anybody in the world, he was referring to basically the Four Noble Truths taught in this first sermon. In his first sermon, Buddha gives the essence or the crux of his teaching. Now, according to Dhamma Chakra Parvattana Sutta, the crux of his teaching is what we call the Four Noble Truths. Four Noble Truths, beginning with the Noble Truth of suffering, Noble Truth of origin of suffering, the Noble Truth of cessation of suffering, and the Noble Truth of path leading to the cessation of suffering. Now, everybody is familiar with this, and I don't need to go into details of this. But the significance of this whole scheme of Four Noble Truths is that Buddha analyzes the human situation, and he doesn't stop there. Having analyzed it, then he proposes a solution to this problem. Now, basically, the noble truth of suffering refers to the human condition. Dukkha, it basically refers to the fundamental unsatisfactory character of human existence, which is caused by the craving and other defiling factors that are basically in our mind. So, which is the second noble truth. And the third noble truth is the cessation, the happiness, ultimate happiness, the best of all types of happiness, namely nirvana. And the last is the path, ethical path to be followed in order to realize this. So ultimately, the teaching of the Buddha, Dharma Chakra Parvattana, is not necessarily about suffering. It is more to do with the happiness, the highest happiness. And in order to gain the lasting, permanent, higher and the highest form of happiness is the ethical path taught by the Buddha. I think when Buddha refers to his own turning of the wheel, Dharma Chakra Parvattana, as aprativartya, what he meant by this is, now this particular analysis of human situation and the solution proposed by the Buddha is something we would use the term everlasting. Now, everlasting in the sense, of course, it sounds like going against the doctrine of anitya or impermanence in Buddhism. That is not what I mean. Everlasting in the sense, this particular teaching is beyond time and space. I think that those who are familiar with the teaching of the Buddha know that Dhamma is described as akalika. Akalika means timeless. Timeless means what is taught in the Four Noble Truths. This human situation is timeless. The fact that human beings are unsatisfactory, ultimately that we are seeking for happiness. We seek various types of pleasures. Ultimately, these pleasures themselves are impermanent. So therefore, the lasting happiness is all of our cherished desire. So therefore, this particular fact remains timeless and also spaceless. I do not want to go into the details of Four Noble Truths with you because everybody knows about this thing. But basically, the turning of the wheel initiated by the Buddha on ASADHA full moon day. We know that in the history it has been rolling, it has been kept on turning up till now, even after 2600 years. And then the message of the Buddha is found in today all over the world, which doesn't mean that everybody has converted into Buddhism. That is not the part of the agenda of the teaching of the Buddha. But the whole purpose of the turning of the wheel, which cannot be stopped by anybody, means that this particular message, irrespective of time and space, irrespective of any type of religious denomination or any type of dividing factors among human beings, this particular analysis and therefore this particular teaching and the path remains valid. So I think the most important message of this day is really the Dharma taught by the Buddha for the whole world. So it is not merely to ancient India where Buddha taught this doctrine. As all of us know, I am speaking from Sri Lanka, to which country Buddhism was transmitted in the 3rd century BCE by Emperor Ashoka. Emperor Ashoka goes to the history as perhaps one single person who turned from Digvijaya to Dharma Vijaya. In other words, who turned from Ajna Chakra to Dharma Chakra, or combined both chakras. His was Ajna Chakra, but he combined it with the Dharma Chakra. And he gave up Digvijaya at some point and adopted Dharma Vijaya. So these concepts go together. So in the history of the world, we know that there is a paramount example of a ruler turning into it. So as a result of that turning into Dharma Chakra, Dharma Vijaya, many countries, including Sri Lanka, received this sublime message from ancient India. Now today in India and also in Sri Lanka and many other Asian countries and in the West and the America and all over the world, people respect this teaching, not only respect, simply because they follow this teaching. So therefore, the message for this today is ASADHA full moon day, the turn of the wheel of the Dhamma, which was initiated by the Buddha. And it is the people of the modern generation, to keep it rolling, keep it turning, so that not only us and the future generations of people will benefit from this teaching. I think I should stop at that point. So therefore, reminding again, it is the study of this doctrine and the practice of doctrine, and to ultimately realize the supreme bliss or supreme happiness realized by the Buddha. And this is the ultimate message of the ASADHA full moon day. Sabbe satta bhavantu sukitatta. May all beings be well and happy. Thank you very much.
In his short but very interesting talk, Professor Ananda Tilakaratne said how this seminal teaching of Lord Buddha was from the Samyukta Nikaya, and he gave a beautiful analogy that the wheel that we speak of in Buddhism, the Dharma Chakra, is a wheel that cannot be turned back. It cannot be resisted. And he related it to the wheel of command, the Agya Chakra, that belongs to the Chakravartin kings. This wheel, which cannot be turned back, which cannot be resisted, which is relentless in going forward for the benefit of the world, is beyond time and space. It's akalika. The most important message the professor wanted to get across to us is this timeless wheel that keeps on rolling. And he spoke very movingly and powerfully at the end of his talk about our great responsibility to keep this wheel of the Dhamma turning for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Today, as we observe the auspicious day of ASADHA Poornima, we must acknowledge the contribution of the many individuals and institutions who contributed to presenting before you this rich and varied program of blessings and Dhamma talks. It would not be possible to thank everybody individually, but we must acknowledge their support and their efforts. We received a number of video messages from supreme heads of Buddhist Sanghas from various countries. His Holiness the Dalai Lama, patron of IBC, sent his message. His Holiness Samdek Priya Aga Mahasangh Rajpati Tepuang, the Supreme Patriarch of Cambodia. His Eminence Somdat Pra Arya Vamsa Gatanan, the Supreme Patriarch of Thailand. His Eminence Thich Tri Quang, Deputy Sangharaja, National Vietnam Buddhist Sangha. Video message also we received from Dhamma Master Sintao, abbot of the Linju Mountain Monastery and founder of Museum of World Religions, Taiwan. Most Venerable Makuleve Vimala Mahanayake Thero, Shiravanna Mahanikaya, Sri Lanka. Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi, the Chuangyen Monastery, United States. We also had a series of Dhamma talks by eminent Buddhist masters and scholars from different countries. Most Venerable Arya Vangso, Abbot of the Buddha Puj Hari Punjal Forest Monastery in Thailand, Venerable Geshe Lakdorla, the Director of the Tibet Works and Archives in Dharamshala, Most Venerable Amala Wrightson Sensei, Director of the Auckland Zen Center, New Zealand, Venerable Bhikkhu Kabagoza Buddhagaraksika, Abbot and President, Uganda Buddhist Center, Professor Robert Thurman, world-renowned Buddhist scholar, and Professor Asanga Tilakaratne from Nalanda University. The Dhamma talks were very ably compared by Sri Kabir Saxena. I would also like to thank the many monks and institutions which helped us with the chanting at different places. The Mula Gandhakuti Vihara Sarnath for the chanting there of the Dharma Chakra Parvattana Sutta. Also like to thank Venerable Samten La, Director of the Central University of Tibetan Studies in Sarnath, for his support to this program, and to ASI for permission to shoot there. We are chanting from the Anuradhapura temple in Sri Lanka, the Mangalagathas chanting at the Bodhi tree in Buddha Jayanti Park in Delhi, chantings from the National Vietnam Buddhist Sangha, from the Mahadevi temple at Lumbini, and Abhaygiri Vihara in Sri Lanka. I would definitely like to thank everyone concerned who contributed to this program, and also all of you who have been watching us. We seek your blessings and your support as we go forward in this journey. Thank you very much.
We now have a special ASADHA Poornima program on the relevance of the teachings of Lord Buddha in the age of technology. This is organized by the Embassy of India, Thimphu, Bhutan.
Constitutes the main part of this morning's program at the embassy. And now, may I request the Ambassador of India to Bhutan, Ruchira ma'am, to kindly come up on stage and deliver the opening remarks. Ma'am.
Your Highness, Princess Aji Kezang Wongmo Wangchuk, Dr. Tandi Dorji, Honorable Foreign Minister of Bhutan, Dashu Paljor Dorji, Special Advisor, National Environment Commission, Dashu Karma Ura, President, Center for Bhutan Studies and GNH Research, Linpo Sonam Tobge, former Chief Justice of Bhutan, Dr. Tashi Zangmo, Executive Director, Bhutan Nuns Foundation, distinguished guests. A very warm welcome to India House. We are indeed privileged and deeply honored to have such a wonderful audience today. Today is special, being ASADHA Poornima, the anniversary of the first sermon of Lord Buddha to the 5 ascetics at Deer Park in Sarnath, Varanasi, India. In honor of this day, I thought I'd speak of something which undoubtedly requires a great deal more time than we have today, yet nonetheless, I will attempt to make a beginning and start a conversation for us all. I'd like to briefly touch upon the relevance, and perhaps not even that, the necessity of the teachings of Lord Buddha in this age of technology. A couple of years ago, when I was posted in Paris, I came upon a curious blue book called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. I remember it raining that evening as I curled upon our couch and I read the following words, quote, "The Buddha, the Godhead, resides quite as comfortably in the circuits of a digital computer or the gears of a cycle transmission as he does at the top of the mountain or in the petals of a flower. To think otherwise is to demean the Buddha, which is to demean oneself." Unquote. And it was at that moment that I came face to face with a profound truth, a perspective that I had been blind to for many years of my life, that the deep truths of spirituality are not merely reserved for visits to ancient temples or walks within the deep hours of the morning. It is in everything we see. It is embedded in the grand wheels of advancement which push us towards a future we once only dreamt of as children. It is embedded in the steel and the gold and the mire. So perhaps when we fear the decline of spirituality in the modern age, we should in fact dispel the fear itself and instead look upon this as a new landscape to cultivate our gods. The Buddha lies in the circuits of the digital computer, the gear of a cycle transmission, and the top of the mountain. That being said, I find that there is a timeless message of Lord Buddha, often overlooked in the modern age, and that is of service. As society outgrew the meager barter system and founded billion-dollar industries of seemingly infinite wealth, ironically, the world became a lot more desperate. And as a consequence, the notion of service towards others has perhaps diminished. Perhaps the world got a little too big and a little too complicated for us to see oneness within the 7 billion. The notion of unending compassion to those we will never see eye to eye with, and to those with whom we so violently and passionately disagree with, to those we may never meet, is considered foolish today. And that is a great loss for us. Some of us spend our whole lives wondering, what will give this life meaning? I think we forget that one of the greatest acts of purpose for human beings lies in love. And that to show love in empathetic shape and irrational, boundless form is the road to our own peace. And it is the mad obsession with our safety, with ourselves only, that strips the bark of life, that makes the tree wilt and bend on its knee to the earth in weakness. Dramatics aside, I am a great believer in the amalgamation of spirituality and the modern world. And that spirituality is not merely bound to the ancient, but is forever shape-shifting with the new. I will stop here and not preempt the discussion any further. Back to the MC. Thank you. Tashtil.
Thank you, Ambassador Ma'am, for reminding us about the importance of service towards others, unending compassion, empathy and love, as well as the importance of maintaining spirituality and the modern world. Now, it is my pleasure to hand over today's program to our keynote panelists, Dr. Tashi Zangmo, Dasho Karma Ura, and Leonpo Sonam Tokyo. So I would request Dr. Tashi Zangmo to kindly start the proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm really humbled and honored to be part of this panel, and moderate for our two scholars and philosophers. And Your Excellency, Your Highness, Your Excellencies, Venerables, ladies and gentlemen, this give me the opportunity to introduce our first panelist, Dashu Karmamura. Dashu, everybody knows that Dashu Karmamura is the president of Center for Bhutan Studies and PNH in Bhutan. But I will not spend much time on explaining all his achievements and works here because of the time. However, I would like to, I'm honored to introduce that the Government of India, the latest award that Dashu has received from the Government of India, awarded him as a, which is very relevant for this today's event, is the Vishak Saman Prashasti Patra for 2020 in recognition of his scholarship and fine arts in Buddhism. I feel this is something very relevant and he deserves it. And his latest 2 volumes on Bhutan will be published this year by Oxford University Press, and he is an advisory member of World Happiness Report, the Wellbeing Center of Oxford University, and the School of Wellbeing So I would like to start with discussion questions. Questions. I'm advised to share with you that today in ASADHA Poornima, which is celebrated in India and other parts of the world, anniversary of the first ceremony by Lord Buddha, and is happening Buddha, not the first global trip, and his first would you share with us
in a belief that the technology of living standard will solve all the problems of humanity. An AI pioneer, Arvind Minsky, had also a very mechanistic view of human being. He thought that human beings are essentially great meat machines, machines in the form of our tissues, solving information processing. And that when you make big progresses on this, human beings and AI will be merged, and we can compute powerfully all the problems out of our way. And it's also sort of hypothesized that as time goes on, AI and human beings will merge together, and all the key features of human beings can be downloaded on a chip. This is a kind of an incarnation, while the body will fail us finally. So the mind and body might be programmed and designed not to feel dukkha at the end. This is the extreme view. Not to need cessation of suffering, or not to need the path at the last of the Four Noble Truth. And that is an extreme view of technology's role in transforming human beings. Transhumans will come about, let's say. But such views of technology equipped by AI to breed super intelligent human beings worries many people. And the last one is Stephen Hawkins, and he kind of foretold the dangers of this kind of AI in human life. Basically, of course, a lot of people think this is a very far-fetched idea of uploading human mind on chips instead of biochemical tissues. Now, the main problem with this kind of technology of living standard in extreme form of AI is that it leaves out two very important questions. The question of consciousness, which is at the heart of Buddhism, question of, in this Tantra version, is a question of primordial consciousness, Rigpa, luminosity, and bodhicitta, which machines are unlikely to ever have, is my view too. In both Sutra and Tantra path, the potential of human mind towards is not efficient information processing, but really towards some sort of greater freedom and greater release from these ever cycles of life. Equally, it leaves out a very important question, which also should apply to AI itself and computer science. That's the question of intentionality and the question of ethics, which should, of course, affect all the spheres of human life, whether it is economy, politics, international relations, etc., etc. So, my main, to conclude, Doctor, is that the question of consciousness and question of ethics are timeless, and is also central part of the Four Noble Truths. The essence of all Buddhist teachings is condensed, as you know, in Four Noble Truths. Within the Four Noble Truths, the second Noble Truth describes the process in which our ill-being arises, our dukkha arises, our suffering arises. And within the second Noble Truth, the process of dependent origination, explicated in 12 links of dependent origination, Patika Samutpada, is at the heart of teachings. In fact, in the Rice Seedling Sutra, it is pronounced that whosoever sees dependent origination sees the Dharma, and whosoever sees this Dharma sees the Buddha. So, to conclude, not only the first truth of the first and the second Noble Truth are timeless. Cessation of dukkha and the path out of cycle of dukkha are truth accessible from outside of time. For every historical period, teachings of Buddha had responded in different forms, in different schools, in different places. And I like to end here by pointing out that in this age too, the impact of Buddha's teaching found in Satyanapata Sutta, this is a sutra about mindfulness, And Anapanasati Sutra, dealing with breathing, breathing meditation, has enormous impact. This is the Pali version of the sutra, but the Agarma Sutras are the Chinese version, directly translated from oral sources that was floating in northern India. So I'm referring to the Pali version. So we are living now in an age of facing issues bigger than individual sufferings of birth, aging, and of course death and annihilation. From all the probabilistic forecast, Earth, we know, and I think this will come home to Rashu Paljor Dorji, the Earth, we know, is dying and has been suffering greatly over the last 1 century. And I look forward to the leadership of both India and Bhutan and their profound relation to respond internationally also to this as Buddhists. Thank you.
Thank you, Dasho. I really agree with you that the Buddha's teaching is very much relevant even in today's world, and also it's believed to be evergreen, actually, that there is no time for that. And also the next question, the follow-up is that since we are, after His Majesty has proclaimed the gross national happiness as a philosophy of our Bhutan's development, how much do you think that the Buddhism has influence in gross national happiness?
So my answer to this will be very short, because GNH is a cliche here, so I don't want to prolong this. Whether we call it Buddhist teaching or not, I would like to say the truth of the Buddhist teaching pervades the whole world. They know some aspect of it is very applicable. I like to think of Buddhist teaching in the analogy of sunlight. Sunlight pervades the whole space, whether the space is dark or light. Let's say it is dark, but the sunlight is always present, and it is recognized when it is received by an obstructing object which reflects the sunlight. So it's something like that also in my mind. I like to think that the light of Buddhist teachings in its various forms, as I just referred, and in its various schools, touches important aspects of Buddhism. Since it's been here almost now, sort of gurus stepping in, and even before that, from 6th century onwards, due to the Bodhisattva works of emperors like Songtsen Gampo. In this respect, I'm sure that the fourth King, His Majesty Jigme Singye Wangchuk, the author of GNH, have certainly been influenced by the culture of Buddhism in which he was brought up in a deep way, and that it influenced his conceptualization of gross national happiness. Now, going back to India once again, the 4th century Gandharan philosophers like Asanga and Vasubandhu of the Abhidharma fame tells us that we interpret our perception and attention once again by our framework of pleasure and desire. And that is the basic standpoint to analyze human beings from Dharma Pithi's point of view. We develop Buddhist teachings. And as the doctor knows very well, since you are a Buddhist scholar, that standpoint from our vocabulary is Marikpa in Chiki. At the same time, all the worthy dedications of all proper Buddhists is for happiness of all sentient beings. So where is the meeting point between Buddhism and GNH? I just like to foreshadow. To be analytically clear, the dedication made by proper Buddhists for happiness of all sentient beings must be consistent, must be consistent, must not be confused with this standpoint, must not be born out of this confusing standpoint of Marikpa, and must be consistent with the basic tenets of path, for precepts, of this layman's life, and Eightfold Path, etc. I think GNH, just listening to Ambassador before we came here, she used the word balance. I think in this respect, GNH is also a balancing tool for both the individuals and at a systemic level, at the level of government, to sort of balance themselves between the extremes of materialistic pursuit of GDP maximization. And that's probably coming to an end. I think we will see some moderation to it, and it will probably come to an end, and some new metrics will take over. And the budget had an unexpectedly long life since 1956. It's a way of GNH, it's a way of balancing this and against intangible constituents of human well-being that go beyond the matrix of GDP. And what are these intangible constituents which are foreshadowed in GNH, developed by His Majesty Portman? And these are things like psychological well-being, community vitality, balanced time use. You know, in Buddhism also, in the northern Tibetan Himalayan version, also Deljo, Nikumba, again, this being busy all the time in 8 different ways is a curse. It's a curse, really. So we have to respond to that by adopting balanced time use, environment and cultural preservation. And these have to be maintained in their own right, not balanced against GDP. So I like to think, finally, to wind up my response, that every nation can be thought of as a enduring stage. That's the purpose of nations. It protects certain type of values and thoughts, certain type of the core of the civilization. And no matter what is it, whether it's a big nation or small nations, and the more a small nation is successful to protect that, then its purpose is served. So it is a very special enduring stage of time where human beings, in the ideal of fourth king and now fifth king, is that it should experience both tremendous transformation and tremendous transcendence and transformation towards calm and content state of mind as much as possible in the limited period of 70 years or so we live on this earth. And also transcendence, something very mystical about human life, the question of consciousness. I refer to the question of ethics. This is not about yourself, this is about you and yourself, and then further about you and others. That's the question of ethics. So both those things are mature, has been maturing for the last millennia also in this state. So that is the purpose, I think, of the nation in which GNH is adopted, influenced by the culture of Buddhism.
Yes, thank you very much, Rasho. I don't have at the moment any questions from my side, but I will offer the public at the end. I think we'll save the questions from the audience at the end for two of our panelists. And then I'll move on to continue. I'll move on to His Excellency Lepo Sonam Toke, our second panelist for this very special occasion. And also everyone knows that His Excellency has served several years as the Chief Justice of Bhutan, and also was just to condense, otherwise he has 2 pages of his achievements, and then I even wonder, is this possible for one's lifetime? So please forgive me, because everybody would love to hear you and to listen to you, what you have to say about today's program, rather than, because people can look up on the internet and find out it's amazing achievements in his life. And another area that he served is very important, is that as a chairman of the drafting committee of the Constitution of Bhutan, and many other in the board, and as a chairperson he has served. But the one that is very relevant to today's topic is that His Excellency has published a book that we would like to know, and he will enlighten us today on this, is that Buddhist jurisprudence and three constitutional principles, which has been launched on the 14th July 2021, coinciding with the first sermon of Lord Buddha in Bhutan. In the lunar calendar, there was Seshi. So that's when His Excellency has launched the book. And for this, I would like to begin with a question that why did you title this book as a Buddhist jurisprudence? Why Buddhist? So if you can enlighten the audience, would be really appreciated.
Firstly, it is your Royal Highness, Your Excellency, Indian Master, and the our distinguished audience here. It's a great honor to hear that the Government of India has observed this great day with a sterling message from the Honorable Prime Minister, and I would like to thank Your Excellency for inviting me to this sacred occasion. This day is a very important, and we have to repeat what Rashu has said. My book starts with this. When Lord Buddha attained his enlightenment in Bodh in his vision he sees that this, on the request of Brahma, Lord Brahma, he should preach this religion to others, and then in his vision he saw his 5 disciples, among other things, but the things shown. So 5 disciples of friends who were residing in Sarnath or Varanasi. So the Lord Buddha decided to go there, and then he promulgated or initiated 4 noble truths. The 4 noble truths, I will not go into the detail of it as Dashu has very well explained, but 4 noble truths is associated even with the law. And at that time, there were 3 things. 1, the 4 noble truths. Secondly was the law of Dharma. Third was Dharma Chakra. And Honorable Prime Minister of India did mention about it. And Dharma Chakra is enigmatic, the symbol of Lord Buddha. And he said he will rule the wheel of Dharma or truth and the law. So the very fact that he ruled or he started the wheel of Dharma from a spiritual point, Dashu has covered, but other aspect is that wheel was the first invention of modern science, and Lord Buddha chose this enigmatic symbol for the technology and invention. Therefore, Lord Buddha's teaching is not contradictory to the science, and also it is not, but it embraces technology. Secondly, when the Lord Buddha pronounced in the Parvattana, it is mentioned much more in detail one of the 5 essential elements of that creed was how, where Dashu had mentioned the sila, or the ethics or morality of those. Because Lord Buddha, to a great extent, he must have been conscious of misusing the invention and science. Therefore, he enunciated a very strong ethics. After Lord Buddha's time, then when this chakra, or Ashoka chakra, was adopted in government in 1948 in the Constituent Assembly of India, Dr. Ambedkar has in a very eloquent and impassioned manner, when he presented the proposal of this, he has done it so well, and he said the creed depicts past and movement in future. So therefore, Lord Buddha always moved in future. In short, he was very futuristic. And so in my book, I start with this, I go to Benares to promulgate the laws and Dharma Chakra there. So that's why I choose that symbol. And moreover, it depicts the very fact. Secondly, Lord Buddha was never against technology and others. Number one was that when the Enlightenment age of Europe was growing and also against science and technology at that time, Lord Buddha was much ahead of others. One of the principles that Lord Buddha embraced was the block printing, and he embraced it. He did not say that it should continue in a oral tradition. In short, he was very embracing in the technology. And now also, in Bhutan, we have adopted technology in consonance with Buddhism. In the prayer wheels done by water, prayer wheels done by wind, these are the purposeful or positive use of the Dharma. Secondly, coming up to the point of my law jurisprudence, I had to choose this word very carefully. A, that it should be encompassing. B, that it should be able to transmit a message, what the book contains. Third, it should be able to understand more easily by others. So the word jurisprudence is not a new idea, but an idea which fits in with according to the international concepts and others. And Lord Buddha was never against the convention. So in consequence that I choose that word, the Buddhist jurisprudence. The jurisprudence encompasses the theories, philosophies, practices and others, and therefore the Lord Buddha's words actually fitted very well according to this word. So I have chosen this word like that, but we have used the pre-constitutional principles. It is fascinating that so many things, the modern legal principles which have been initiated by the philosophers as well as by the legal scholars and judges, actually they all were there in the Vinaya and Sutra.
Thank you. Another follow-up question to this. I'm not sure how many of our audience knows about this, but I have heard and I have always been wanting to ask these questions. When you were serving as a Chief Justice in the High Court, I believe you often used to refer to the Tripitaka, one of the Tripitakas of Buddha, Kanjur. You used to be always referring and reading. So could you tell us a little bit about the connection between the Kanjur, one of the Tripitakas, and the law of these days law? How can you relate this to that?
I was inspired by there was His Holiness J. Kempo. He mentioned that there is a sect, that there is a priest in the Tripitaka, there is about a law. All of us thought that Kanjur was basically, or Tripitaka was basically a religious discourse. His Holiness said otherwise. Secondly, Albert Einstein also said, if in the age of technology and science, if any religion can survive or nearest to it, it is Buddhism. So it is in this connection that I felt if it is relevant to science and technology, it must be relevant to law. So we have done that. But I want to talk about Supreme Court. That's a past that I don't want to look back. But the reason why I looked into it is because of three reasons. One, whenever we enact laws, we do transportation of ideas from outside. In other short, we copy what is happening in Western countries. In India and in Bhutan, but in India in particular, in Bhutan, Lord Buddha and only Hindu jurisprudence, there's a obvious examples that are related or semblance to the Western jurisprudence. So we looked into it. That was the first reason that we should look into the past, for our root is in the past. If the Lord Buddha said, you should be like unto the trees which grows which grows deep in the soil and gives shade to all others. So I think the root we preserve. Second thing is that if it is done, it is more easily accepted. And I don't go into details about it. When I said about due process law or fair trial, a lot of people said it's a foreign idea. But when I said it's a ringyuwa or dansha, people easily accepted it because it was an association of the spiritual values, deep thinking and veneration for the tradition that we had so inherited from the past. Third point is that His Majesty, the fourth king, who always valued traditions and culture of our country, so that my country, and then following in obedience to that vision, I felt that we should be able to do as much as possible, try to take from a Buddhist concept and merge with the international concept. And I think that we have done. And in this context, if you read the book as well as some of the scholars, particularly I have to keep on Dr. Ambedkar. When Dr. Ambedkar presented, I hope Your Excellency I am not making mistake, when he presented his draft of the Constitution to the Parliament of India, and he said, liberty, freedom, liberty, fraternity. And some of the opposition said it's a foreign idea. Obviously, this was Robespierre's idea he initiated. He said, no, I have not copied any of these from any of the Western countries or the philosophy. I have based my writing on Buddhist law. And if you read that, his presentation or his speech to the Parliament, it is most wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I would like to open the floor for questions for our two panelists. One each question. I think we have time for one each.
There is a roaming mic. Anybody who wishes to ask a question can raise their hand.
While people are thinking about the questions, I'll give Tashkarma Ura to.
I think that just want to. I just like Lempo was referring to many textual sources in a comparative way. I just want to outline that if you look at the 128 points, country, it cannot be claimed, I think, convincingly by anyone that they could go through all this. It's a lifetime's undertaking. And but my main point is that
students of this university, the Kanjur starts with 4 first volumes on the Vinaya. It's a huge...
each one is 800 pages or so. 4 volumes start with Vinaya, the rules for the monks. But when you define the rules for the monks, it inevitably has to touch with rules for what is non-monks. So I like to say that it could be potentially very interesting undertaking for someone to study all the developments of this kind of discipline from Vinaya. Lampu knows very well that comparatively speaking, this could be perhaps quite old. A lot of the, I was dabbling in it. I was just snooping, dipping around it without reading thoroughly. And I am amazed that it reads a bit like Socratic dialogue. It's mostly dialogue rather than prescription. And you have, of course, Justinian, Constantine also. And you have China also, Confucian, legalism versus authoritarianism. A lot of material. But if someone could place the Vinaya in this secular framework, it could be quite interesting. I like to say that the first codification, people make a mistake, in my opinion, always trying to sum up the situation by the text. But many societies don't have text. They go on with another kind of ways of holding on to truths of the past, lessons from the past, learnings from the past through other means. So it was quite delayed, I think, in our case. So the decree of Shadow, that was definitely codified in 1731, is heavily influenced by some aspects of heavily influenced. Very interesting in my opinion. But my main point is that the antiquity of Vinaya shows something that's brilliant about the organization. Of course, monasteries are also a kind of organization. So when you say organization, you have to have rules because you are dealing with mass of people. And how Buddha's thoughts on this were codified after 5 centuries in Vinaya. To me, is a great work to be done. I refer to Parvattana Sutra and Parvattana Sutra. And for the audience, that the work of Bhikkhu Analaya is extremely fascinating book on critical comparative study of Agama Sutra, Pali, and the Indian and the Tibetan sources. So, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Dasho. I absolutely agree with Dasho, and also especially our teachers, for some reason, our teachers or our traditionally our people think that these are very sacred texts to be preserved in the shelves and never to look at it. Especially Vinaya, when it comes to Vinaya, we don't discuss. Since I work with the nuns, I know so because our nuns, they have never even looked at the Vinaya, which is in a way, it's a pity that everyone should read, and it's really to research. And fortunately, actually in this day and age, Jamaican Rinpoche has started translating it into English too, so that it's accessible to everybody in the whole world because it's so relevant. So that's why I brought up this, because I've been trying to ask this question about Kanjur to His Excellency. And also it takes you back to those days. And while you are today sitting in this on this chair, it will take you back to those days when you read. It's such an amazing communication between the people, Buddha's time and now. So that's why it's really fascinating to me, and I hope we can, instead of keeping it as a sacred, we will take an opportunity to read and read Kanju. At least it's the Buddha's teaching. It's from the words of the Buddha, the community of the Buddha students after he passed away, that they came together and put it into writing. So it's really amazing. Thank you so much. So anybody has any questions?
Thank you, Lundu and Rasha, for inspiring discussion. Like Dr. Tashi, I was also fortunate to be in India and complete the studies from BHU and even Ghana. And during when I came back to Bhutan, then I attended Kumbh was Buddhist conference presided by the Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi. These few years, I found that the Prime Minister of India has been giving a great inspiration and initiative to the Buddhist community, and that's also which is the root philosophy of India, which is very important that India knows that. And I just want to know the Rinpoche and Dasha's view on the initiative, strong initiative given by the Prime Minister of India. And that really, we feel really fortunate and proud. Thank you.
I think this is very appropriate for Your Excellency to reply.
Thank you very much, Your Highness, and to everybody here. I think it's a wonderful discussion we are having today, and today is a very special day. So I think it is appropriate that all these points are raised. I was very happy to hear Dashu Karmaura and also Rinpoche Sonam Topke. They made some very interesting points. So my compliments to you. I also think that what Rinpoche Sonam Topke mentioned was a great interest to me, and it was knowledge also to me that, when Lord Buddha gave his first sermon, the Dharma Chakra day, the wheel turned, and he was very certainly you interpreted it as future-oriented, technology-oriented, and then he spoke about block technology, and I fully agree with you. To come to the question that you raised, I think it's a very good observation that you've made, and indeed it is a fact. The current Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi, has deeply emphasized India's very rich Buddhist heritage. And to give you just one tiny example, because Dashu Karmaura pointed a question towards me, very recently in one of his statements, foreign policy statements, he has said that among the chief tenets of India's foreign policy, we also draw upon our very rich Buddhist heritage, which is why in foreign policy positions that India takes, there is no extreme statement that we make, no extreme positions that we take. We are a voice of moderation, we are a voice of reason, and that is why in global fora, in the United Nations and other multilateral fora, when India speaks, people respect India, because India speaks not just for itself, but it speaks for the world, a voice of reason, a voice of moderation. And the Prime Minister, in fact, drew attention to this, and he said that this position that India takes is draws back, harks back to our very rich and strong Buddhist heritage. And there are many, many other examples where the Prime Minister has personally been involved in drawing attention, in reviving India's rich Buddhist heritage. And I compliment you for that observation, because it is indeed correct. And it is also one of the reasons why we are here gathered today in this discussion.
Like to add? No. She's looking somewhere. I think this is it, unless you want a few last points to share. Otherwise, I think it was a very enriching, wonderful discussion we had this morning. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I definitely enjoyed, and thank you all.
Thank you very much, keynote panelists, Darshu Karma Pushwanam Topke, and our Buddhist scholar, Dr. Dashi Zanmo. Indeed, I just sum up, take 30 seconds of yours. Basically, there were several ideas. Jyoti spoke about Albert Einstein's statement that if there's any religion which can survive in the present day, it must be Buddhism. Darshu Karma drew light to the philosophy of the fourth group about maintaining a balance between psychological well-being and environmental and cultural preservation. Dr. Dashi spoke about the importance of reading sacred texts, not just preserving them in the library. And of course, who can forget Leon Poe's drawing attention to the concept of block printing, to the adoption of technology in Bhutan, the prayer wheels turning by way of wind and water. So I think this is what I would just summarize as the panel discussion, and extend my thanks once more. So we come to the end of the program, but before we conclude this, I would like to extend our deepest gratitude and state that we are honored by the presence of Her Highness, Her Royal Highness Ajahn Keza Ngawang Wangchuk. We are also privileged to have the Foreign Minister of Bhutan, Dasho Benji, our keynote panelists, as well as revered Khenpos and other scholars at this function. I would like to request everyone to gather outside for a family photograph, and thereafter there is a small refreshment arrangement for everyone. Thank you. Tashidare Kalishma.
We now have a special ASADHA Poornima program from Abhayagiri Vihar, Sri Lanka.
Ayubowan. Now I am standing in the historic and sacred premises of Abhayagiriya in the ancient kingdom of Anuradhapura in Sri Lanka. Today, from this holy land, we send you all greetings and blessings for a very happy ASADHA Poornima. In Sri Lanka, we call this ASADHA festival. So today is the ASADHA full moon day. We Buddhists celebrate this all over the world. I am here in this premises, which is a very special and a unique place in the Buddhist history. Today, we have the chief abbot of Abhayagiriya Mahavihare, Most Venerable Dr. Kallanche Ratanasara Thero with us.
සියලු දෙනාටම උතුම් සම්මා සම්බුදු සරණ පිහිට ප්‍රාර්ථනා කරමි. IBC ආයතනයේ මගින් ඇසලපුන් පොහෝ දිනයේ නිමිති කරගනිමින් ලුම්බිනිය බුද්ධ ගයාව හා ඓතිහාසික අනුරාධපුර පුදබිමෙහි අබේගිරි විහාරස්ථානයේ කේන්ද්‍ර කරගනිමින් සිදු කරන ලබන ආගමික වතාවත් පිළිබඳ මෙවර ඇසලපුන් පොහෝ දිනයේදී කටයුතු ඉදිරියට කරන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වන බව අපට දැනගන්නට පුළුවන්කම ලැබුණා. ඒක නිසා IBC ආයතනයේ මගින් සිදු කරනු ලබන මේ ශාසනික හා සේවය සර්ව ප්‍රකාරයෙන්ම සාර්ථක භාවයටම පත් වේවා. උතුම් රත්නත්‍රයේ පිහිට ආරක්ෂාම ඒ සියලු දෙනාටම ලැබේවා කියලා ප්‍රාර්ථනා කරමින් මා අද ඓතිහාසික අබේගිරි විහාරස්ථාන පුදබිමේ සිට ඔබ අමතීමට බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා. ක්‍රිස්තු පූර්ව 89ත් 77ත් අතරද ලංකාවෙහි රජකම් කරන ලද වට්ටගාමිනී අභය සෙවත් වලගම්බා මහා නිරිඳුන් විසින් තමයි කුපික්කල විහාරවාසී මහාතිස්ස හාමුදුරන් වහන්සේට කරන ලද පෞද්ගලික පූජාවක් වශයෙන් තමයි අප ශාන්තිනායකලෝ ගුරු බුදු පියාණන් වහන්සේගේ ශ්‍රී ශාරීරික ධාතුන් වහන්සේලා රත්තරණින් කරන ලද වෘෂභේකුගේ කුක්සියෙහි නැත්තම් බඩෙහි තැන්පත් කරලා මේ ධාතු ගර්භෙහි තැන්පත් කරලා මේ චෛත්‍ය රාජයන් වහන්සේත් ඒ වගේම පිරිවෙන් 12කින් යුක්ත වූ ආරාම සංකීර්ණයකුත් ඉදි කරලා මහාතිස්ස හාමුදුරන් වහන්සේට පෞද්ගලික පූජාවක් වශයෙන් පූජා කර බව ඓතිහාසික ලේඛනවල සඳහන් වෙනවා. අභය ගිරි කියන නම සකස් වෙලා තිබෙන්නේ මුලින් සඳහන් කළාක් වගේම වට්ටගාමිනී අභය කියන රජතුමාගේ අභය කියන නාමයත් ඒ වගේම මේ චෛත්‍ය රාජන් වහන්සේ නිර්මාණය කිරීමට මත්තෙන් මේ ස්ථානයේ ආශ්‍රිතව ගිරි නිගණ්ඨාරාමයක් පැවතුන බවත් වලගම්බා මහා නිරිඳුන් ප්‍රථම වතාවට රාජ්‍යත්වයට පත් වෙලා සොලීන්ට පරාජය වෙලා නගරයෙන් පැනලා යන අවස්ථාවෙහිදී මෙම ස්ථාන හිටපු ගිරි නිගණ්ඨයා මහ කළු සිංහලයා පැන යනවා කියලා හයියෙන් කෑ ගහපු බවත් අපේ ඓතිහාසික වංශ කතාවේ සඳහන් වෙනවා. ඒ නිසා ඒ ගිරි නිගණ්ඨාරාමය අයින් කරලා නමුත් ඔහු අමතක නොකර රජතුමාගේ නම වන අභය කියන නාමයත් ගිරි කියන නාමයත් එකතු කරලා අභයගිරි කියන මේ නම තබපු බව අපට වංශ කතාවේ සඳහන් වෙනවා. ඒ අනුව අප ශාන්තිනායක තුලෝගුරු බුදු පියාණන් වහන්සේගේ ශ්‍රී ශාරීරික ධාතුන් වහන්සේලා තැන්පත් මේ උත්තම ඓතිහාසික පුදබිම ශ්‍රී ලාංකිකයන් වශයෙන් අප කවුරුත් විශ්වාස කරන දෙයක්. ඒ වගේ අපේ වංශ කතාවේ සඳහන් වන කාරණයක් තමයි ශාන්තිනායක තුලෝගුරු බුදු පියාණන් වහන්සේ තෙවරක් නැත්නම් තුන්වරක් මේ ශ්‍රී ලංකා දීපේට වැඩපු අවස්ථාව. ඒ වගේම අවසාන අවස්ථාවේදී තුන්වෙනි අවස්ථාවේදී කැලණියට වැඩමෝක්ෂ කරලා උන්වහන්සේ ශ්‍රී ලංකා දීපේම සතර දිසාවෙහිම තිබෙන ස්ථාන 16ක නැත්නම් 12ම ස්ථානයකටම උන්වහන්සේ වැඩලා මොහොතක් සමවත්සෝයෙන් වැඩ ඉඳලා උන්වහන්සේගේ පාදස්පර්ශයෙන් අතිපාරිශුද්ධත්වයට මේ ස්ථානපත් කර බව සඳහන් වෙනවා. එම 12ම ස්ථාන වන්දනා ගාථාවෙහි ඓතිහාසික අබේගිරි හඳුන්වලා තිබෙන්නේ භයාගිරින් කියලා මේ ස්ථානේ හඳුන්වලා තිබෙන නිසා උන්වහන්සේගේ ශාන්තිනායක තුලෝගුරු බුදු පියාණන් වහන්සේගේ පාදස්පර්ශයෙන් අතිපරිශුද්ධත්වයට පත් වුණා වූ උත්තම පින්බිමක් තමයි මේ ඓතිහාසික අබේගිරි විහාරස්ථාන. ඒ වගේම මේ ස්ථානය අප ශාන්තිනායක තුලෝගුරු බුදු පියාණන් වහන්සේගේ 84000ක් ධර්මස්කන්ධයේ ස්පර්ශයෙන් ලැබුණා වූ වාමශ්‍රී දළදා වහන්සේ කිස්සිරිමවන් රජ දවස මේ ශ්‍රී ලංකා දීපේට වැඩපු අවස්ථාවේදී එහි බාරකාරත්වය හිමිකාරත්වය ඒ වගේම ඒ දළදා වහන්සේ සෑම වර්ෂයක් පාසාම ඓතිහාසික අබේගිරි විහාරස්ථානයේට වැඩමවලා 3 මාසයක් ප්‍රදර්ශනය කරලා මේ ස්ථානයේ දවස් 10ක් තිස්සේ 550 ජාතකයේම චිත්‍රයට නගලා මේ අබේගිරි විහාරස්ථානයේ සිට ඇතුල් නුවර දළදා මාලිගය දක්වා පෙරහැර කරපු ආකාරය පිළිබඳව මහා වංශයත් ඒ වගේම පස්වෙනි සතවර්ෂයේදී ශ්‍රී ලංකා දීපයට වැඩමවා වදාළ චීන ජාතික පාහියන් හිමියන්ගේ දේශාටන වාර්තාවෙහි මනාකොට පැහැදිලි කර තිබෙනවා. ඒක නිසා වාමශ්‍රී දළදා වහන්සේගේ ස්පර්ශයේ රැඳුනා වූ අති උතුම් පින්බිමක් තමයි මේ ඓතිහාසික අබේගිරි විහාරස්ථානය කියලා කියන්නේ. ඒ වගේම මුල් කාලීන වශයෙන් මහාතිස්ස කුපික්කල විහාරවාසී මහාතිස්ස හාමුදුරන් වහන්සේට මේ චෛත්‍යරාජයන් වහන්සේ ඇතුළු පිරිවෙන් 12 පූජා කළ පමණක් නොව ඉන්පසුව උන්වහන්සේගේ ශිෂ්‍ය රත්නයක් වන බහලමස්සුතිස්ස හාමුදුරන් වහන්සේ මහා විහාර වාසී තවත් භික්ෂූන් වහන්සේලා 500ක් සමග මේ ස්ථානට වැඩමවලා උන්වහන්සේත් මේ ස්ථානයේ වැඩ ඉඳිමින් මෙය වෙනම ආරාම සංකීර්ණයක් වශයෙන් සම්වර්ධනය වෙන්නට පටන් ගත්තා. අබේගිරි විහාරස්ථානයේ හඳුන්වන තවත් නම් කීපයක් අපිට දකින්න පුළුවන්කම තිබෙනවා. අභයගිරිය, භයාගිරිය, භගිරි නගරය, උත්තරාරාමේ, උත්තර මේඝගිරි විහාරය ආදී නම් කීපයකින් හඳුන්වනු ලබන්නේ මේ ඓතිහාසික අභයගිරි විහාරස්ථානය. මුල් කාලීන වශයෙන් මහා විහාර සම්ප්‍රදායට අනුකූලව තේරවාද සම්ප්‍රදායෙන් යුක්තව පාලි භාෂාව ප්‍රමුඛත්වයෙන් යුක්තව එහි අධ්‍යයන කටයුතු ඉෂ්ට කළත් පසු කාලීන වශයෙන් 5 වෙනි සතවර්ෂයේ 6 වෙනි සතවර්ෂයේ 7 වෙනි සතවර්ෂයේ පමණ වන විට මෙය ආරාමයක් විහාර සංකීර්ණයක් පමණක් නොව මූලික අධ්‍යාපනයේ සිට තෘතීය අධ්‍යාපනයේ දක්වා ලබා දෙන විශ්වවිද්‍යාල මට්ටමේ අනුරාධපුර යුගයේ ලංකාවේ විශ්වවිද්‍යාල දෙකක් අපිට දකින්න පුළුවන්කම තිබෙනවා. එකක් තමයි මහා විහාරය, අනික තමයි අබේගිරි විශ්වවිද්‍යාලය. ඒ වගේම ඒ අනුව විශ්වවිද්‍යාල මට්ටමින් පවතින අවස්ථාවෙහිදී මෙය වර්තමානයේ විශ්වවිද්‍යාලවල තිබෙන පීඨම නැත්නම් ෆැකල්ටි ආකාරයෙන් ෆැකල්ටි 5කට පමණ මෙහි අධ්‍යාපන කටයුතු සිදු කර බව අපට දකින්න පුළුවන්කම තිබෙනවා. වහදු මුල, උත්තර මුල, කපාරා මුල, මහානෙත් පසාද මුල හා සුදස්සන පධානගරය කියන මේ ප්‍රායෝගික වශයෙන් භාවනා ආදී පුරුදු පුහුණු කරන මධ්‍යස්ථානයකින් යුක්ත වූ විශාල ආරාම සංකීර්ණයක් බවට පත්වෙච්ච බව අපිට දකින්න පුළුවන්කම තිබෙනවා. ඒ නිසා තෘතීය අධ්‍යාපන රාජකුමාරවරුන්, ඒ වගේම විදේශීය භික්ෂුන් වහන්සේලා, විදේශීය රාජකුමාරවරුන් පවා ශ්‍රී ලංකාද්වීපයට වැඩමවලා අධ්‍යාපනය කර බව අපේ වංශ කතාවන්හි දකින්නට පුළුවන්කම තිබෙනවා. ඒ වගේම මේ ස්ථානයේ ආශ්‍රිතව විශාල ධර්ම ග්‍රන්ථ රාශියක් රචනා වෙච්ච බවත් ඓතිහාසික වශයෙන් ලේඛනවල සඳහන් වෙනවා. ඒ වගේ අපේ ශ්‍රී ලංකාද්වීපයේ මහා වංශයේ, දීප වංශය වැනි ඒ වගේ අනික් වංශ කතාවන්හිදී මේ ඓතිහාසික පින්බිම පිළිබඳව සඳහන් වෙනවා. මම මුලින් සඳහන් කළාක් වගේම වලගම්බා රජතුමන් මුල් කාලීන වශයෙන් මේ චෛත්‍යරාජයන් වහන්සේ මේ තරම් විශාලවට නිර්මාණය කර බවක් අපිට දකින්න පුළුවන්කමක් නැත්තේ නෑ. පසු කාලීන වශයෙන් බොහෝ රාජරාජ මහා මාත්‍යාදී මේ ස්ථානයට වැඩමවලා පැමිණිලා එතුමන්ලා ආධාර උපකාර කරමින් මේ ස්ථානය සංවර්ධනය කර බව අපට දකින්න පුළුවන්කම තිබෙනවා. ඒ අනුව චෛත්‍යරාජයන් වහන්සේ ගජබා රජතුමන් අඩි 400ක් පමණ උසට නිර්මාණය කර බවත් අපට මේ දැනට දකින්නට තිබෙන චෛත්‍යරාජයන් වහන්සේ පොළොන්නරු යුගයේ මහා ප්‍රාක්‍රම බාහු රජතුමන් ප්‍රතිසංස්කරණය කළයින් පසුව අපේ විසින් සංරක්ෂණය කරන ලද දාගැබ් වහන්සේ අපිට මේ පසුපසින් දකින්නට පුළුවන්කම තිබෙනවා. ඉතින් දැනට හඳුනාගත් ඓතිහාසික අබේගිරි විහාරස්ථානයේ අක්කර 500ක පමණ භූමි ප්‍රදේශයක පැතිරී පවතින බව අපට දකින්න පුළුවන්කම තිබෙනවා. ඒ වගේම මේ ස්ථානයේ ආශ්‍රිතව භික්ෂුන් වහන්සේලා විශාල පිරිසක් එකලත් වැඩ ඉඳලා තිබෙනවා. ඒ වගේම දැනට ශ්‍රී ලංකාවෙන් සොයාගෙන තිබෙන උත්කර්ෂවත් කලාත්මක සඳකඩ පහන හොඳම සඳකඩ පහන පවතින්නේ ඓතිහාසික අබේගිරි විහාර සංකීර්ණය. ඒ වගේම උත්තම සමාධි බුද්ධ ප්‍රතිමා වහන්සේත් පවතින්නේ මේ ඓතිහාසික අබේගිරි විහාරස්ථානයේ. ඒ වගේම කලාත්මක මුරගල පවතින්නේ මේ ඓතිහාසික අබේගිරි විහාරස්ථානයේ. පොකුණු අතර ඉතාමත්ම කලාත්මක පොකුණ වන කුට්ටම් පොකුණ දකින්න පුළුවන්කම තිබෙන්නේ ඓතිහාසික අබේගිරි විහාරස්ථානයේ. ඒ වගේම ලංකාවේ තිබෙන පොකුණු අතර විශාලම පොකුණ වශයෙන් හඳුන්වනු ලබන ඇත් පොකුණ පවතින්නේ මේ ඓතිහාසික අබේගිරි විහාරස්ථානයේ. ඒවා පොහොය ගෙවල් අතරත ඉතාමත් මනරම් වූ ඒවා දර්ශනීය වූ තුම්මහල් ප්‍රාසාදයක් බවට පත් වෙලා තිබිච්ච රත්න ප්‍රාසාදය අපිට දකින්න පුළුවන්කම තිබෙන්නේ ඓතිහාසික අබේගිරි විහාරස්ථානයේ. ඒ වගේම සන්නිපාත ශාලා, විශාලම සන්නිපාත ශාලාවන්, විශාලම දානශාලා, චතුස්ශාලා මේ හැම දෙයක්ම අපිට දකින්න පුළුවන්කම තිබෙන්නේ මේ ඓතිහාසික අබේගිරි විහාරස්ථානයේ ආශ්‍රිත. ඒ අතින් කලාත්මක අතින්ම ඒ වගේම ධර්මමය අතිනුත් සුවිශාල මෙහෙවරක් ඉස්තෙද්ද කළ සුවිශේෂී ස්ථානයක් වශයෙන් ඓතිහාසික අබේගිරි විහාරස්ථානයේ හැඳින්වීමට පුළුවන්කම තිබෙනවා. මීට අමතරව විශේෂයෙන් ඉන්දියාවේ තිබිච්ච මහායාන සම්ප්‍රදායක සාගලික නිකාය, ධර්මරුචි නිකාය, වෛතුල්‍ය නිකාය ආදී ඒ වගේම වෙනත් මහායානික ධර්ම ග්‍රන්ථයන් අධ්‍යයනය කරමින් ඓතිහාසික අබේගිරි විහාරස්ථානයේ භික්ෂුන් වහන්සේලා කටයුතු කර බව අපට හොඳ ආකාරවම දකින්න පුළුවන්කම තිබෙනවා. මහා විහාර භික්ෂුන් වහන්සේලා පාලි භාෂාවෙන් පමණක් ඒ කටයුතු ඉෂ්ට කළත් අභයගිරි විහාරවාසී භික්ෂුන් වහන්සේලා එකල ජාත්‍යන්තර භාෂාව වන සංස්කෘත භාෂාවෙනුත් අධ්‍යයන කටයුතු ඉස්සෙයිද කර බව දැනට ලංකාවෙන් හොයාගෙන තිබෙන හොඳම සෙල්ලිපිය වන කපාරාමූල සෙල්ලිපිය නැත්නම් ජේතවනාරාම සෙල්ලිපිය කියලා අපි හඳුන්වනු ලබන. මොකද ඉස්සර වශයෙන් මේ චෛත්‍යරාජයන් වහන්සේ හඳුන්වලා තිබුණේ ජේතවනාරාමයේ කියලායි. ඒක නිසා මේ චෛත්‍යරාජයන් වහන්සේගේ ආශ්‍රිතව කපාරාමූලයේ ආශ්‍රිතව ඒ කරන ලද සෙල්ලිපිය සංස්කෘත භාෂාවෙන් කරන ලද සෙල්ලිපිය අපිට දකින්න පුළුවන්කම තිබෙනවා. එය ජේතවනාරාම සෙල්ලිපිය වශයෙන් දකින්න පුළුවන්කම තිබෙනවා. ඒක නිසා එකල භික්ෂූන් වහන්සේලා මහායාන ධර්ම ග්‍රන්ථයේ ධර්ම ග්‍රන්ථයන් රචනා වෙලා තිබෙන ඒ සංස්කෘත භාෂාව පිළිබඳව හසල දැනුමක් සහිතව භික්ෂූන් වහන්සේලා මේ අභයගිරි විහාරයේ ආශ්‍රිතව වැඩ සිටු බව මනාකොට ප්‍රකාශ කරන්න පුළුවන්කම තිබෙනවා. ඒ වගේම මහා විහාර වාසී මහා නාම හාමුදුරන් වහන්සේ එදා මහා වංශයේ ලියන්නට ප්‍රථම ඓතිහාසික අභයගිරි විහාරස්ථානයේ භික්ෂූන් වහන්සේලා උත්තර විහාර වංශ නම් මේ ශ්‍රී ලංකා දීපයේ ඉතිහාසයේ සඳහන් වන ඓතිහාසික ග්‍රන්ථයක් රචනා කර බව අපිට දකින්න පුළුවන්කම තියෙන වංශාත්තප්පකාසිනී වැනි මහා වංශ ටීකාවෙත් ඒ බව සඳහන් වෙනවා. ඒ වගේම විසුද්ධි මාර්ගයේ බුද්ධඝෝස හාමුදුරන් වහන්සේ ලියන්නට මත්තෙන් ඓතිහාසික අභයගිරි විහාරස්ථානයේ භික්ෂුන් වහන්සේලා විමුක්ති මග්ග නම් ධර්ම ග්‍රන්ථයක් රචනා කරලා තිබිච්ච බවත් අපිට දකින්න පුළුවන්කම තිබෙනවා. වෝහාරික තිස්ස රජ දවස මෙහි අන්තර්ගත ධර්ම ග්‍රන්ථයන්හි වෛතුල්‍යවාදී මත ඇතුළත් වෙලා තිබෙන නිසා එය විනාශ කළ යුතුයි කියලා සඳහන් කරලා ඓතිහාසික අභයගිරි විහාරස්ථානයේ පුස්තකාලයේ තිබිච්ච ධර්ම ග්‍රන්ථ ඇතුන් 9 දෙනෙකු පමණ උසට ගොඩ ගහලා ගිනි තිබ්බ බව සඳහන් වෙනවා. ඒ අතින් ධර්ම භාණ්ඩාගාරයක් ඒ වගේම ශාසනික ඉතිහාසයේ අද වර්තමානයේ උතුම් දළදා පෙරහැරන්නේ ආරම්භය ඒ වගේම නාරමුර පුණ්‍ය කර්මයන්ගේ ආරම්භය ඒ වගේම යන්ත්‍ර මන්ත්‍ර පිරිත් දේශනාවන් ආදී ආගමික චාරිත්‍ර වාරිත්‍රයන්හි ආරම්භක සුවිශේෂී මධ්‍යස්ථානයේ වශයෙන් ඓතිහාසික අභයගිරි විහාරස්ථානයේ අපට හඳුන්වන්න පුළුවන්කම තිබෙනවා. ඒක නිසා එදා සිට මහායාන ධර්ම ග්‍රන්ථයන් පිළිබඳව අධ්‍යයනය කළ වජ්‍රයාන ඒ වගේම මහායාන ආගමික නිකායන් ඇවිල්ලා මේ ස්ථානයේ තුලනාත්මකව අධ්‍යයනය කළ සුවිශේෂී අධ්‍යාපන මධ්‍යස්ථානයක් ආගමික මධ්‍යස්ථානයක් බුදුන්ගේ පහසින් පහසලක් උත්තම සිද්ධාස්ථානයක් වශයෙන් ඓතිහාසික අභයගිරි විහාරස්ථානයේ හඳුන්වන්නට පුළුවන්කම තියෙනවා. තෙරුවන් සරණයි.
We know today is a very significant day for the Buddhists because on a day like this the Buddha started teaching the Dhamma. The Buddha started spinning the wheel of Dhamma. So, to mark that historic and precious moment, the Mahasangha are ready to chant the Dhamma Chakra Sutra.
Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sam තථාගතේන අභිසම්බුද්ධා චක්කු කරණී ඥාන කරණී උපසමාය අභිඤ්ඤාය සම්බෝධාය නිබ්බානාය සංවත්තති අයමෙව අරියෝ අට්ඨංගිකෝ මග්ගෝ සේයති දං සම්මා දිට්ඨි සම්මා සංකප්පෝ සම්මා වාචා සම්මා කම්මන්තෝ සම්මා ජීවෝ සම්මා වායාමෝ සම්මා සති සම්මා සමාධි අයං ගෝධා භික්ඛවේ මජ්ක්‍ධිමා පටිපදා තථාගතේන අභිසම්බුද්ධා චක්කු කරණී ඥාන කරණී උපසමාය අභිඤ්ඤාය සම්බෝධාය නිබ්බානාය සංවත්තති ඉදං කෝපන භික්ඛවේ දුක්ඛං අරිය සත්‍යං ජාතිපි දුක්ඛා ජරාපි දුක්ඛා ව්‍යාධිපි දුක්ඛෝ මරණම්පි දුක්ඛං අප්පියේ සම්පයෝගෝ දුක්ඛෝ පියේ විප්පයෝගෝ දුක්ඛෝ යම් විච්ඡං න ලබති තම්පි දුක්ඛං සංගිත්තේන පංච උපාදානස්කන්ධා දුක්ඛා ඉදං කෝපන භික්ඛවේ දුක්ඛ සමුදයං අරිය සත්‍යං යායං තණ්හා බෝනෝ භවිකා නන්දි රාග සාගතා තත්‍ර තත්‍රාභිනං දිනී සේයදේ දං කාම තණ්හා භව තණ්හා විභව තණ්හා ඉදං කෝපන භික්ඛවේ දුක්ඛ නිරෝධං අරිය සත්‍යං යෝ තස්සායේව තණ්හාය අසේද විරාග නිරෝධෝ චාගෝ පටිනිස්සග්ගෝ මුක්ති අනාලයෝ ඉදං කෝපන භික්ඛවේ දුක්ඛ නිරෝධගාමිනී පටිපදා ආරිය සත්‍යං අයමේව අරියෝ අට්ඨංගිකෝ මග්ගෝ සේයදේදං සම්මා දිට්ඨි සම්මා සංකප්පෝ සම්මා වාචා සම්මා කම්මන්තෝ සම්මා ආජීවෝ Samma vayamo Dhamma sati Samma samadhi Idang dukkhaṃ ariya saccanti me bhikkave pubbē ananussutēsu Dhammesu cakkhung udapādi ஞānaṃ udapādi paññā udapādi vidyā udapādi āloko udapādi Tangko panidang dukkhaṃ ariya saccam parinneyanti me bhikkave pubbē ananussutēsu dhammesu cakkhung udapādi ඥānaṃ udapādi paññā udapādi vidyā udapādi āloko udapādi Tangko panidang dukkhaṃ ariya saccam pariññātanti me bhikkave pubbē ananussutēsu dhammesu cakkhung udapādi ඥānaṃ udapādi paññā udapādi vidyā udapādi āloko udapādi Idang dukkha samudayaṃ ariya saccanti me bhikkave pubbē ananussutēsu dhammesu cakkhung udapādi ඥānaṃ udapādi paññā udapādi vidyā udapādi āloko udapādi Tangko panidang dukkha samudayaṃ ariya saccam patabbanti me bhikkave pubbē ananussutēsu dhammesu cakkhung udapādi ඥānaṃ udapādi paññā udapādi vidyā udapādi āloko udapādi Tangko panidang dukkha samudayaṃ ariya saccam pahinanti me bhikkave pubbē ananussutēsu dhammesu cakkhung udapādi ඥānaṃ udapādi paññā udapādi vidyā udapādi āloko udapādi Idang dukkha nirodhaṃ ariya saccanti me bhikkave pubbē ananussutēsu dhammesu cakkhung udapādi ඥānaṃ udapādi paññā udapādi avidyā udapādi āloko udapādi Tangko panidang dukkha nirodhaṃ ariya saccam saccikātabbanti me bhikkave pubbē අනනුසුතේසු ධම්මේසු චක්කුං උදපාදි ඥානං උදපාදි පඤ්ඤා උදපාදි විඤ්ඤා උදපාදි ආලෝකං උදපාදි තං ගෝපනිදං දුක්ඛ නිරෝධං අරිය සත්‍යං සච්චිකතන්ති මේ භික්ඛවේ පුබ්බේ අනනුසුතේසු ධම්මේසු චක්කුං උදපාදි ඥානං උදපාදි පඤ්ඤා උදපාදි විඤ්ඤා උදපාදි ආලෝකෝ උදපාදි තං ගෝපනිදං දුක්ඛ නිරෝධං අරිය සච්චිකතන්ති මේ භික්ඛවේ පුබ්බේ අනනුසුතේසු ධම්මේසු චක්කුං උදපාදි ඥානං උදපාදි පඤ්ඤා උදපාදි විඤ්ඤා උදපාදි ආලෝකෝ උදපාදි ඉදං දුක්ඛ නිරෝධගාමිනී පටිපදාරිය සච්ඡන්ති මේ භික්ඛවේ පුබ්බේ අනනුසුතේසු ධම්මේසු චක්කුං උදපාදි ඥානං උදපාදි පඤ්ඤා උදපාදි විඤ්ඤා උදපාදි ආලෝකෝ උදපාදි තං ගෝපනිදං දුක්ඛ නිරෝධගාමිනී පටිපදාරිය සත්‍යං භාවේ තබ්බන්ති මේ භික්ඛවේ පුබ්බේ අනනුසුතේසු ධම්මේසු චක්කුං උදපාදි ඥානං උදපාදි පඤ්ඤා උදපාදි විඤ්ඤා උදපාදි ආලෝකෝ උදපාදි තං කෝපනිදං දුක්ඛ නිරෝධගාමිනී පටිපදාං අරිය සත්‍යං භාවිතන්ති මේ භික්ඛවේ පුබ්බේ අනනුසුතේසු ධම්මේසු චක්කුං උදපාදි ඥානං උදපාදි පඤ්ඤා උදපාදි විඤ්ඤා උදපාදි ආලෝකෝ උදපාදි යාවකී වංච මේ භික්ඛවේ ඉමේ සුජතුසු අරිය සච්චේසු එවං ති පරිවට්ටං ද්වාදසාකාරං යථා භූතං ඥාන දස්සනං නසු විසුද්ධං අවෝසි නේවතාවහං භික්ඛවේ සදේවකේ ලෝකේ සමාරකේ සබ්‍රහ්මකේ සස්සමන බ්‍රාහ්මනියා සදේව මනුස්සාය අනුත්තරං සම්මා සම්බෝධිං අභිසම්බුද්ධෝ පච්චඤ්ඤාදින් යතෝ චකෝ මේ භික්ඛවේ මේ මාර්ගේසු චතුසු ආරිය සත්‍යේසු එවං ති පරිවට්ටං ද්වාදසාකාරං යථා භූතං ඥාන දස්සනං සුවිසුද්ධං අවෝසි අතං භික්ඛවේ සදේවකේ ලෝකේ සමාරකේ සබ්‍රාහ්මකේ සස්සමන බ්‍රාහ්මනියා පජාය රදේව මනුස්සාය අනුත්තරං සම්මා සම්බෝධිං අභිසම්බුද්ධෝ පච්චඤ්ඤාදින් ඥානං ච පනමේ දස්සනං උදපාදී අකුප්පමේ චේතෝ විමුක්ති අයමන්ති මාජාති නත්ථි දානි පුනබ්බවෝති ඉදම වෝච භගවං අත්තමනා පංච වග්ගියා භික්ඛු භගවතෝ භාසිතං අභිනන්දුන්ති ඉමස්මින් ච පනවෙය්‍යා කරණස්මින් භඤ්ඤමානේ ආයස්මතෝ ගොණ්ඩඤ්ඤස්ස විරාජං වේතමලං ධම්මචක්කුං උදපාදී යං කිංචි සමුදය ධම්මං සබ්බන්තං නිරෝධ ධම්මං පවත්තිතේ ච පන භගවතා ධම්මචක්ඛේ භුම්මා දේවා සද්ද මනුස්සාවේසුං ඒතම් භගවතා වාරාණසියං ඉසිපතනේ මිගදායේ අනුත්තරං ධම්මචක්ඛං පවත්තිතං අප්පතිවත්තියං සමනේන වා බ්‍රාහ්මනේන වා දේවේන වා මාරේන වා බ්‍රහ්මුණා වා කේනචිවා ලෝකස්මින් තේ බුම්මානං දේවානං සද්දං සුත්වා ධාතුම් මහරාජිකා දේවා සද්ද මනුස්සාවේසුං ඒතම් භගවතා වාරාණසියං ඉසිපතනේ මිගදායේ අනුත්තරං ධම්මචක්ඛං පවත්තිතං අප්පතිවත්තියං සමනේන වා බ්‍රාහ්මනේන වා දේවේන වා මාරේන වා බ්‍රහ්මුණා වා කේනචිවා ලෝකස්මින් තේ චාතුම් මහරාජිකානං දේවානං සද්දං සුත්වා තාවතින්සා දේවා සද්ද මනුස්සාවේසුං ඒතම් භගවතා වාරාණසියං ඉසිපතනේ මිගදායේ අනුත්තරං ධම්මචක්ඛං පවත්තිතං අප්පතිවත්තියං සමනේන වා බ්‍රාහ්මනේන වා දේවේන වා මාරේන වා බ්‍රහ්මුණා වා කේනචිවා ලෝකස්මින් තේ දාවතින්සානං දේවානං සද්දං සුත්වා යාමා දේවා සද්ද මනුස්සාවේසුං ඒතම් භගවතා වාරාණසියං ඉසිපතනේ මිගදායේ අනුත්තරං ධම්මචක්ඛං පවත්තිතං අප්පතිවත්තියං සමනේන වා බ්‍රාහ්මනේන වා දේවේන වා මාරේන වා බ්‍රහ්මුණා වා කේනචිවා ලෝකස්මින් තේ යාමානං දේවානං සද්දං තුසිතා දේවා සද්ද මනුස්සාවේසුං ඒතම් භගවතා බාරාණසියං ඉසිපතනේ මිගදායේ අනුත්තරං ධම්ම චක්කං පවත්තිතං අප්පතිවත්තියං සමනේන වා බ්‍රාහ්මණේන වා දේවේන වා මාරේන වා බ්‍රහ්මුණා වා කේන චිවා ලෝකස්මින් තේ දුසිතානං දේවානං සද්දං සුත්වා නිම්මාන රති දේවා සද්ද මනුස්සාවේසුං ඒතම් භගවතා බාරාණසියං ඉසිපතනේ මිගදායේ අනුත්තරං ධම්ම චක්කං පවත්තිතං අප්පතිවත්තියං සමනේන වා බ්‍රාහ්මණේන වා දේවේන වා මාරේන වා බ්‍රහ්මුණා වා කේන චිවා ලෝකස්මින් තේ නිම්මාන රතේනං දේවානං සද්දං සුත්වා පරනිම්මිත වසවත්තිනෝ දේවා සද්ද මනුස්සාවේසුං ඒතම් භගවතා බාරාණසියං ඉසිපතනේ මිගදායේ අනුත්තරං ධම්ම චක්කං පවත්තිතං අප්පතිවත්තියං සමනේන වා බ්‍රාහ්මණේන වා දේවේන වා මාරේන වා බ්‍රහ්මුණා වා කේන චිවා ලෝකස්මින් දේ පරනිම්මිත වසවත්තීනං දේවානං සද්දං සුත්වා බ්‍රහ්ම පාරිරාජ්ජා දේවා සද්ද මනුස්සාවේසුං ඒතම් භගවතා බාරාණසියං ඉසිපතනේ මිගදායේ අනුත්තරං ධම්ම චක්කං පවත්තිතං අප්පතිවත්තියං සමනේන වා බ්‍රාහ්මණේන වා දේවේන වා මාරේන වා බ්‍රහ්මුණා වා කේන චිවා ලෝකස්මින් තේ බ්‍රහ්ම පාරිරාජ්ජානං දේවානං සද්දං සුත්වා බ්‍රහ්ම පුරෝහිතා දේවා සද්ද මනුස්සාවේසුං ඒතම් භගවතා බාරාණසියං ඉසිපතනේ මිගදායේ අනුත්තරං ධම්ම චක්කං පවත්තිතං අප්පතිවත්තියං සමනේන වා බ්‍රාහ්මණේන වා දේවේන වා මාරේන වා බ්‍රහ්මුණා වා කේන චිවා ලෝකස්මින් දේ බ්‍රහ්ම පාරිරාජ්ජානං දේවානං සද්දං සුත්වා මහා බ්‍රහ්මා දේවා සද්ද මනුස්සාවේසුං ඒතම් භගවතා බාරාණසියං ඉසිපතනේ මිගදායේ අනුත්තරං ධම්ම චක්කං පවත්තිතං අප්පතිවත්තියං සමනේන වා බ්‍රාහ්මණේන වා දේවේන වා මාරේන වා බ්‍රහ්මුණා වා කේන චිවා ලෝකස්මින් තේ මහා බ්‍රහ්මානං දේවානං සද්දං සුත්වා පරිත්තාභා දේවා සද්ද මනුස්සාවේසුං ඒතම් භගවතා බාරාණසියං ඉසිපතනේ මිගදායේ අනුත්තරං ධම්ම චක්කං පවත්තිතං අප්පතිවත්තියං සමනේන වා බ්‍රාහ්මණේන වා දේවේන වා මාරේන වා බ්‍රහ්මුණා වා කේන චිවා ලෝකස්මින් දේ පරිත්තාභානං දේවානං සද්දං සුත්වා අප්පමාන භා දේවා සද්ද මනුස්සාවේසුං ඒතම් භගවතා බාරාණසියං ඉසිපතනේ මිගදායේ අනුත්තරං ධම්ම චක්කං පවත්තිතං අප්පතිවත්තියං සමනේන වා බ්‍රාහ්මණේන වා දේවේන වා මාරේන වා බ්‍රහ්මුණා වා කේන චිවා ලෝකස්මින් දේ අප්පමාන භානං දේවානං සද්දං ආවත්තරා දේවා සද්ද මනුස්සාවේසු ඒතම් භගවතා භාරාණසියං ඉසිපතනේ මිගදායේ අනුත්තරං ධම්මචක්කම් පවත්තිතං අප්පතිවත්තියං සමනේන වා බ්‍රාහ්මණේන වා දේවේන වා මාරේන වා බ්‍රහ්මුණා වා කේනචිවා ලෝකස්මින් තේ ආවත්සරාණං දේවානං සද්දං පරිත්ත සුභා දේවා සද්ද මනුස්සාවේසුං ඒතම් භගවතා භාරාණසියං ඉසිපතනේ මිගදායේ අනුත්තරං ධම්මචක්කම් පවත්තිතං අප්පතිවත්තියං සමනේන වා බ්‍රාහ්මණේන වා දේවේන වා මාරේන වා බ්‍රහ්මුණා වා කේනචිවා ලෝකස්මින් පරිත්ත සුභානං දේවානං සද්දං අප්පමාන සුභා දේවා සද්ද මනුස්සාවේසුං ඒතම් භගවතා භාරාණසියං ඉසිපතනේ මිගදායේ අනුත්තරං ධම්මචක්කං පවත්තිතං අප්පතිවත්තියං සමනේන වා බ්‍රාහ්මණේන වා දේවේන වා මාරේන වා බ්‍රහ්මුණා කේනචිවා ලෝකස්මින් තේ අප්පමාන සුභානං දේවානං සද්දං සුභගින්න දේවා සද්ද මනුස්සාවේසුං ඒතම් භගවතා භාරාණසියං ඉසිපතනේ මිගදායේ අනුත්තරං ධම්මචක්කම් පවත්තිතං අප්පතිවත්තියං සමනේන වා බ්‍රාහ්මණේන වා දේවේන වා මාරේන වා බ්‍රහ්මුණා වා කේනචිවා ලෝකස්මින් තේ සුභගින්නකානං දේවානං සද්දං වේහප්පලා දේවා සද්ද මනුස්සාවේසුං ඒතම් භගවතා භාරාණසියං ඉසිපතනේ මිගදායේ අනුත්තරං ධම්මචක්කං පවත්තිතං අප්පතිවත්තියං සමනේන වා බ්‍රාහ්මණේන වා දේවේන වා මාරේන වා බ්‍රහ්මුණා වා කේනචිවා ලෝකස්මින් දේවේහප්පලානං දේවානං සද්දං අවිහා දේවා සද්ද මනුස්සාවේසුං ඒතම් භගවතා භාරාණසියං ඉසිපතනේ මිගදායේ අනුත්තරං ධම්මචක්කම් පවත්තිතං අප්පතිවත්තියං සමනේන වා බ්‍රාහ්මණේන වා දේවේන වා මාරේන වා බ්‍රහ්මුණා වා කේනචිවා ලෝකස්මින් තේ අවිහානං දේවානං සද්දං සුත්වා අතප්පා දේවා සද්ද මනුස්සාවේසුං ඒතම් භගවතා භාරාණසියං ඉසිපතනේ මිගදායේ අනුත්තරං ධම්මචක්කං පවත්තිතං අප්පතිවත්තියං සමනේන වා බ්‍රාහ්මණේන වා දේවේන වා මාරේන වා බ්‍රහ්මුණා වා කේනචිවා ලෝකස්මින් තේ අතප්පානං දේවානං සද්දං සුදස්සා දේවා සද්ද මනුස්සාවේසුං ඒතම් භගවතා භාරාණසියං ඉසිපතනේ මිගදායේ අනුත්තරං ධම්මචක්කං පවත්තිතං අප්පතිවත්තියං සමනේන වා බ්‍රාහ්මණේන වා දේවේන වා මාරේන වා බ්‍රහ්මුණා වා කේනචිවා ලෝකස්මින් තේ සුදස්සානං දේවානං සද්දං සුදස්සේ දේවා සද්ද මනුස්සාවේසුං ඒතං භගවතා වාරාණසියං ඉසිපතනේ මිගදායේ අනුත්තරං ධම්ම චක්ඛං අප්පතිවත්තියං සමනේන වා බ්‍රාහ්මනේන වා දේවේන වා මාරේන වා බ්‍රහ්මුණා වා කේන ජීවා ලෝකස්මින් තේ සුදස්සේනං දේවානං සද්දං සුත්වා අකනිට්ඨකා දේවා සද්ද මනුස්සාවේසුං ඒතං භගවතා වාරාණසියං ඉසිපතනේ මිගදායේ අනුත්තරං ධම්ම චක්ඛං පවත්තේතං අප්පතිවත්තියං සමනේන වා බ්‍රාහ්මනේන වා දේවේන වා මාරේන වා බ්‍රහ්මුණා වා කේන චිවා ලෝකස්මින් තේ ඉතිහතේන කනේන තේන මුත්තේන යාව බ්‍රහ්ම ලෝකා සද්දෝ අබ්බුග්ගංජේ ආයංච දසදාසේ ලෝක ධාතු සංකම්පි සම්පකම්පි සම්භවේදී අපමානෝ චගුලාරෝ භාසෝ ලෝකේ පාතුරෝදී අතික්කම්ම දේවානං දේවානු භාවන්තේ අතකෝ භගවා උදානං උදානේසි අඤ්ඤාදිවත භෝගොණ්ඩඤ්ඤෝ අඤ්ඤාදිවත භෝ කොණ්ඩඤ්ඤෝති ඉතිදං ආයස්මතෝ කොණ්ඩඤ්ඤස්ස අඤ්ඤා කොණ්ඩඤ්ඤෝත්වේව නාමං අවෝදේ ඒතේන සච්ච වජ්ජේන සබ්බ දුක්ඛං විනාස්සතු ඒතේන සච්ච වජ්ජේන සබ්බ බයෝ විනාස්සතු රෝගෝ විනාස්සතු ඒතේන සච්ච වජ්ජේන සබ්බ දුක්ඛං විනාස්සතු ඒතේන සච්ච වජ්ජේන සබ්බ බයෝ විනාස්සතු ඒතේන සච්ච වජ්ජේන සබ්බ රෝගෝ විනාස්සතු.
I hope you have a good understanding about the history of Abhayagiriya and ancient kingdom of Anuradhapura, and also we had blessings from the Mahasangha because they chanted the Dharma Chakra Sutra for all of us. So I thank you for joining this program, and also we would like to thank the International Buddhist Confederation, the Secretary General, and all the other presidents, vice presidents, secretaries, and the members of IBC, and at the same time the government of India to take the Buddhist message to the whole world. I wish you good health and success and happiness. Thank you.
Venerables, ladies and gentlemen, we now conclude the day-long virtual celebration of ASADHA Poornima Dharma Chakra Day. Thank you very much for being with us. We look forward to your continuous support. We now take leave. Namaskar.